All right, let's get started. We're just missing Andrew, yeah? Can't start without him on this last. Director Scott. Where's Director Scott? All right, let's get started. You ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Kara, are you ready?
Stay ready.
Okay. All right, let me start all over. This public regular meeting of the Board of Education for January 7, 2024 is called to order. All items being considered this evening are posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meetings tab. This meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV Services website and on Channel 28, and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for all being here this evening. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping reminders. We ask that everyone at this meeting tonight, members of the public, staff, and board members, treat each other with respect. We are excited that you have taken the time out of the day to watch this boring meeting, hopefully. I'm just kidding. Take time out of the day to get involved in our school district, whether to testify or just observe. If you wish to display signs and or banners, please hold those below chin level so as not to block any attendees' view behind you of the proceedings. For safety reasons, we also need to keep all walkways and aisles clear. And in general, we would appreciate if everyone can be mindful of others in the room. I want to give an update on where we are with filling Director Scott's soon-to-be vacant board seat in Zone 1. As you all know, we have 3 outstanding candidates who have applied for the seat. Christy Splitt, Jasmine Reese, and Jackie Wers. We are scheduled to interview and vote next Monday, January 13th. In terms of the format, I am proposing the following. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to give a 2-minute opening statement. Then each board member and student representative will ask a question of the candidate, who will have 2 minutes to answer. At the conclusion of the board asking questions, each board member will be allowed to ask a follow-up question of which the candidate will have 1 minute to answer. At the conclusion of the interviews, we will then each cast a voice vote at the dais. Each board member will be given 2 interview questions to choose from to ask the candidates. I have asked that Ms. Powell email those to you and for you to let her know which one you want to ask. Are there any questions about this process?
Do you want to clarify that we're asking everyone the same questions so we compare apples to apples?
Yes, part of the reason for doing this is so that we have a uniform process for each candidate asking them the same question.
Just a quick question. Just given what happened last week with the city, and we'll have an even number of board members, I'm assuming we're requiring a candidate to get a majority of what would be a quorum of the board versus a majority of the votes.
Yes, it would. I think
So they need to have 4
laws
votes.
state that they need 4 votes to quorum.
Okay. Not a majority of the.
And Chair Wong, just for clarity, are we asking them the questions that were on the application, or are these separate questions?
On the application. Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if we added any more. However, if you do have suggestions for questions, I think it's fine to send that to Ms. Powell, who can then send it to the rest of the board to decide if we would like to include that in the interview. Yeah, I think the idea here is to kind of give them a chance, A, to say it publicly, and also to maybe perhaps to expand upon some of their answers. Does that help clarify? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Eerily no. All right, next up is election of board leadership. May 2021, the board adopted a process by which board members could be considered for board leadership positions. The resolution states that in order to be considered for a leadership position, board members must notify the board manager in writing by December 1st that they plan to run for the board leadership in the January election. At the last meeting in December, both Vice Chair DePass and I both indicated that we would like to continue in our role as Vice Chair and Chair respectively. There were no other submissions. Do we need to take a vote on that? Because this is a resolution. All right. 7025.
Would you like a motion?
Yes. Do I have a motion as second to adopt resolution 7025?
I move that we adopt resolution 72445?
25.
25.
Second.
Thank you. We have Director Brim Edwards motions and Director Sullivan seconds. Is there any board discussion? Ms. Bradshaw, any public comment?
No.
The board will now vote on 7025, election of board chair. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Representative Consavi, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution 7025 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Consavi unofficially voting yes. Next, we have the resolution to consider the election of Director Michelle DePass as Board Vice Chair. Do I have a motion and second to adopt resolution 7026?
So moved.
Director Brim Edwards moves. Director Holland seconds. Election of Board Vice Chair. Is there any board discussion? Ms. Bradshaw, any public comment?
No.
Board will now vote on 7026, election of a board vice chairperson. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate saying no. Student Representative Consavi, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
Resolution 7026 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Consavi unofficially voting yes. Next up, we have the Superintendent report. Superintendent Armstrong, would you like to give your report?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, Chair, members of the board, community. I'm excited to bring forth my superintendent report for the start of the new year. I think we'll get it loaded. There we go. There we go. The very first thing I want to do, sorry I skipped a slide, is I'm not sure.
Can we
who's-
get some tech support so we can watch it in front of us?
There we go. All right. I think I have the control now. I don't know. I'm just pointing anywhere. It is January, which is School Board Recognition Month. And so I want to pause and publicly thank our school board members for their service. Thank you for being a part of Portland Public Schools. We look forward to finding multiple ways to recognize and honor you this month. And at your chairs, you walked into a gift with some Portland bling that to remind you where you're at and who you serve. So thank you. As you all know, every report I talk about the first 100 days of school plan and our priorities. Our final community transition team meeting is January 23rd, 2025. I typically highlight an item for each priority area, but tonight I want to do something a little different. And I want to talk about improving education for American Indian and Alaska Native students here in Portland Public Schools. I have appreciated the call to action and the reminder from our students, from our families, and from community that we're not doing enough, and that there is a history of failure and repair that needs to happen. And I hope that some of these items that I list out that we're prepared to take action on immediately begins to address some of those things. This report is also linked into the school board agenda under superintendent's report. I want to start off with academic support. Now, we will continue to dedicate $600,000 in our PPS budget with our ResJ partners that has programs that prioritize Native students by grounding and support in culturally relevant ways of being, and the priority has been students in the Cully neighborhood. We'd also like to announce that we're enhancing academic support. We are immediately dedicating funds for an additional 100 hours of tutoring for our students, ensuring academic achievement and cultural connection remain priorities. And so the parent committee will have access to allocate those tutoring hours as they see fit. Next, we'll ensure investment in Native curriculum and projects. In the 2025 bond, we have earmarked of the funds already allocated $1.1 million to ensure curriculum resources, including portfolio projects, be included that celebrate and preserve Native history, culture, and the contributions. And these are items that will be developed and brought forth with input from the community. In addition, we will hire a tribal liaison, so to deepen our partnership with Native families and to ensure sustained engagement for the upcoming 25-26 school year. We plan to put that position in place, and we look forward to continued community collaboration. We want to strengthen pathways and relationships. So in partnership with the community, we want to establish clear K-12 pathways that start with the programs that we already have in place with our littlest learners. We also plan to develop professional learning priorities. So in partnership with our tribal liaison position that will start at July 1, at the start of the next academic year, we'll develop mandatory professional learning opportunities for all of our staff. And we do believe that it's important to create spaces for programs, and we recognize the importance of providing safe and welcoming spaces. And we believe that we have the capacity to do that in some of our modernized buildings. You know, I took a look at our numbers, and right now we serve our American Indian students, we have 1,771. And for our Alaska Native students, we currently serve 183, and these are identified. And we also have heard from community that there are still students yet to be identified. So that's a total of over 1,900 students. Further, when I dug deeper into the data, I found just the first 3 high schools, well, I guess I'm not naming the high schools. In 3 of our high schools, we serve respectively about 300 students. And so what's clear to us is that with 1,900 students across our system, we can afford to have multiple centers located in our modernized, redesigned buildings to be able to welcome and create space that our community has asked for. And then I want to just say personally, it's important to me that we do this work together and in community, that we rise together, that we partner and co-create a process that honors the voices and reflects the unique needs of Native families and students. And we stand ready to meet with community on March 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. to discuss the work, to discuss the tribal liaison position, the $1.1 million in curriculum and other items, and also an aggressive timeline so that we can come together in community and begin to move. I think what I will say lastly is that I believe in our schools, I believe in our teachers, I believe in our students, and I believe in our community. And I do believe that we have what we need in Portland to move work forward. Now, that obviously means maybe establishing more positions as time and budget allows over time, but we're confident that we can take action immediately and not wait. It's clear to us that we have failed to serve and respond to the needs of our Native community. And I just want to declare tonight that we are ready to take action immediately to begin that work in many of our spaces. And with that, together we rise, as I continue to say, is our commitment for moving this work forward. Thank you.
Chair Wong, I have a question. Superintendent Armstrong, thanks for sharing that. list of items that you're bringing forward, were those co-created with the Indian parent community or the Native community?
All of those items were a direct response to requested items that was outlined in the letter that was submitted by the Indian Parent Committee. So from the academic supports with mentoring, from the curriculum resources and the allocation of funds for that. I know in the original report there were 3 options. The first was a standalone building, and then 2 other options were to co-locate in a modernized space, a Native Ed Center, and I believe that we're prepared to do that in a modernized building that we already have, that we don't need to wait for a building to be built to begin the work that needs to happen for our Native students.
But their proposal was a place where those things could happen.
Yeah,
so I'm curious. Did
yeah, there were 3 options.
Was a list
Yeah.
when you formulated it? Was it done in consultation with the group?
It was a response to items that were listed. So in the original letter, there were 3 options. The first was a standalone building. The second was to co-locate, or actually option 2 and 3 were co-locate. I think one of them listed was Jefferson. But since Jefferson isn't modernized and we believe that we have modernized spaces, and because we serve over 1,900 Native students across our district, that there isn't a place identified on that list, because it was clear to community that they wanted to come together and identify a place in collaboration with us. So while I'm not naming a spot, I do know that, as we know, we have modernized facilities, and we want to prioritize some of those asks. We have modernized facilities with a commercial kitchen. We have modernized facilities with a gymnasium. We have modernized classrooms with learning spaces and classrooms that can definitely house and support the request that was in the letter that was written by Interim Director Chair Brown.
Thank you for that great report. All right. Next up, we have our student representative report. Student Representative Kasavi, would you like to give your report?
Yes. All right. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see a packed crowd. So after 2 weeks, our students, are coming back from school, just adjusting to the regular school life. And I want to share some amazing highlights that have been happening at our schools. So Jefferson will be hosting a winter recital at January 16th. PIL will be holding a showcase at Franklin High School at January 17th. And today, Markham students were welcomed back to their school. Yeah. Last month, Superintendent Armstrong joined me at McDaniel for lunch. We had a great opportunity for me to share some concerns I've been hearing from students regarding the phone policy, student safety, and facilities. It's been great to hear her ongoing efforts to build trust with our community, teachers, and students. As we all know, student voice is important and we need to center in our practice, and it's really honored and grateful to hear that their superintendent really prioritizes that, and I look forward to seeing her new initiatives about that. I'm glad that we had a chance to go in a lunch line, be a student, and to also just hear the energy in a lunch. I'm so sorry. We are truly privileged to have Superintendent Armstrong as our superintendent. Recently, I attended a National Student Board Member Association, which was a webinar about communications and student engagement. It was great to learn about all the activities and initiatives they have and how I can bring that back to PPS. As we all know, we've been discussing the phone policy. I want to acknowledge the student voice and their consistent and persistent voice. During October, we shared a survey. We heard from over 2,000 students. And as a student who always runs surveys, it is not easy to get their feedback. And it was very clear to hear from students that they supported having more of a flexible policy that would allow students to have their phones during lunchtime. One of the concerns we heard was safety. We know for lots of our students who eat off campus and their school communities, they don't feel unsafe. And another point is, I think with our current policy we have, it would require yonder pouches. And for example, Yonder pouches would cost over $725,000. During a year where we're having an upcoming budget deficit of over $40 million, that is concerning. That's why myself and the District Student Council is supporting a more of an equitable model that would cost $8,000, that would also recognize what students have shared with us and also be supportive of what our students need. Now, I would like to welcome the McDaniel District Student Council representative, Clara.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Claire Rand Gordon and I am the District Student Council representative at McDaniel High School. I stand before you today to voice the concerns of the students that I represent. While I agree that a much stricter approach of phone use in schools is important for the well-being of our students' education, I do not believe that a district-wide all-day phone ban, including lunch, especially one through costly Yonder pouches, will achieve this goal. As a student of the second most diverse school in Oregon, I've witnessed firsthand the varying needs of our student body. We come from different backgrounds with different experiences and we learn in different ways. Our school community thrives when we have access to a range of curricula and activities that cater to these diverse needs. What we need most right now is more opportunities and resources that would better serve the academic, emotional, and social needs of our students, rather than a costly policy that may harm the very thing that it seeks to protect. We all know that Yonder pouches are extremely expensive, but my concern is not just about the cost, it's about how that money could be better spent. At McDaniel, our school community has experienced loss of staff members, elective options, and so much more due to budget cuts. Our school cannot afford any more costly policies at the expense of our students' education. Think of the time, the funding, and the energy that could be directed towards enriching the educational experiences at our PPS schools. At McDaniel, we already have a phone policy in place, as JJ showed. It's just not consistently enforced, and I would argue that it's presented and framed in a way that encourages students to oppose the policy rather than understand the value of reducing phone usage in the classroom. If we were to better utilize the resources we already have, instead of spending money and wasting resources on an initiative that the district can't afford, the status quo would be much more effective. As a community, we must reflect on why we are even considering such a drastic measure in pursuit of a better education for our students. I understand that there will be a new phone policy no matter what, but I believe that choosing a policy that restricts phones rather than teaching students how to navigate the world we live in with phones could end up being more harmful than helpful. In other words, choosing a phone ban over students' resources is not an option. I care about student success. This new policy is going to heavily impact the environment of our schools no matter what, and I urge all of you to pick a policy where students are supported, not restricted. We can do better than this. Thank you.
Are you done or
That
yeah?
is all. Thank you so much.
Next, we have public comment. First, we will start with student comments. Ms. Bradshaw, do you have any students sign up?
I do. Tate Siegel, Anna Rosnan, Katsy Rivera, and Clara Ron Gordon.
Thank you. As you all are coming up to the podium, the board thanks you for taking the time to attend this meeting and providing your public comments. Public input, especially from our students, is super important and improves our work. We look forward to hearing your thoughts and reflections. Just kind of quick reminder, our board office may follow up on board-related issues raised during public testimony. We request that complaints about individual employees be directed to the superintendent's office as a personnel matter. For materials you'd like to the board to receive, we send them over to Ms. Bradshaw. And if there's any additional materials or items you would like us to have, you can also email them to public comment, all one word, at pps.net. When you begin your comments, just make sure you clearly state your name and spell your last name. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, you'll hear a sound, which means you have 30 seconds to wrap up. Thank you. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Anna Rogosin, Rogosin. I am an 8th grader at Selwood Middle School. I will be a freshman at Cleveland High School this fall. I am a softball and soccer player and have played in the Cleveland Youth Softball League since 5th grade and played soccer since kindergarten. Participating in sports has brought me together with my community and made me stronger. I am really excited to join the Cleveland softball team, but don't understand why players on the Cleveland baseball team have more field access. As a softball player, I will have to travel to 2 miles to Woodstock Park to practice. I'm not sure how I will get to practice after school. Right now, Cleveland High School softball team also has to travel to I.W. Wells Hitting Barn to practice. Why should there be different access at different schools? Aren't we all part of Portland Public Schools? As a Cleveland High School soccer player, I will be sharing the one turf field with 2 football teams and 8 soccer teams, and will be forced to practice before school or late at night. As a female athlete, I think this is unfair and does not support women's athletics. I have learned about Title IX, and in my opinion, the treatment of women's athletics at Cleveland is a clear violation. Many of my friends at Selwood do not want to attend Cleveland because of poor athletic conditions and thoughts that the school is old and run down. I am asking you, as school board members, to please support women's athletics at Cleveland High School and improve access to field space for our teams. Please turf Powell Park so we have a space to practice and play across the street from school, just like the baseball team and other PIL schools. Including turf at Powell Park and fully funding modernization for Cleveland High School will have huge impact on kids in Southeast Portland who currently do not have equal opportunities than other kids in Portland. Thank you.
Good evening to you all. I'm Katsi Rivera Guzman, Riveri-Guzman. I'm a sophomore at Cleveland High School and president of the Native Student Union there. I am also an enrolled member of the Indian Education Program. I am a descendant of the Shoshone-Bannock tribes of Fort Hall, Idaho. I also am part Puerto Rican and Mexican. I'm here a second time to again provide my perspective as to why PPS should support a Native Student Success Center. I am both disappointed and angered that I have to be here a second time to advocate for the support my community needs. However, I am here again because I know that the Native students in PPS need this. I had hoped that our original request would be welcomed and supported by the board. Instead, it has been ignored and cast aside. We don't need just additional tutoring or a tribal liaison. We need to be part of the decision-making in every point. Our people come from a long history of broken promises and our importance and unique needs being overlooked. This is why we are asking for a commitment in the bond that will force the school board to act for our Native community. The decision to not even include the discussion of what would strengthen our community and our faith in PPS to do right by Native students shows a lack of commitment by the district. This past week, I took a trip to my reservation, where I was able to meet students of my age and background who live there. I noticed the rich community and connection there was between the students. I noticed that they all had in common their passion and ties to their culture, and they could share that with each other. I do not have that here. I am the president and only current member of the Native Student Union at Cleveland, with only my advisor to connect with about my culture. I feel culturally isolated and at times invisible. Because I don't have students who share the same cultural heritage as me. A Native Student Success Center would bring me the cultural connection and sense of belonging that I and all the Native community in PPS has been needing and asking for. Portland is home to one of the largest urban Native American populations in the U.S. There are an estimated 60,000 Native Americans who call Portland home, and they represent more than 380 tribal affiliations. The diversity within our own Native community is significant, and in an urban environment, it is much more difficult for Native people to stay culturally connected, being away from our traditional homelands. The Student Success Center would provide a space for our PPS Native students to stay connected with and informed on their culture. We know students with strong cultural connections and positive racial identity have higher self-esteem, are more likely to graduate high school, and are less likely to consume drugs and alcohol. With your support, we can build this space to center the needs of our Native students and allow them to be both culturally and academically successful. The relationship between the Native community and education is complex and steeped in mistrust. I have 3 generations of boarding school attendees in my immediate family. Every other Natives family has similar stories. Portland Public Schools has the opportunity to shift this narrative by listening to the Native community and supporting our ask for a Native Student Success Center. May I please finish?
Yeah. Finish.
I ask you to please consider our proposal and add it as a line item in the upcoming bond. Whatever is in that bond, I promise you that the Native community has been waiting much longer for the educational needs of Native students to be prioritized. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, my name is Tate Siegel, S-E-G-A-L. I'm 14 and an 8th grader at West Sylvan Middle School. Before I would start, I would like to thank PPS and the school board for giving me the opportunity to speak here. My goal in the next few minutes is to educate those who are unaware of boys volleyball and to advocate for players within the PPS community. Boys volleyball is one of the fastest growing sports in the country, and for good reason. Volleyball requires teamwork, hand-eye coordination, strength, and mental toughness. Through all of this comes a fun and exciting sport that benefits all aspects of the human body, both physical and mental. But there are other benefits too. A survey of Oregon boys who played high school volleyball the last few years told us that over 50% of those boys played no other sports in high school. This suggests that this emerging sport is reaching kids who haven't experienced the excitement of being on a team and getting involved in fun activities at school. And we know that students who participate in activities at their schools are more likely to succeed and graduate. Over the last few years, there have been a few unofficial seasons of boys high school volleyball. Then, in October 2023, I and several other students spoke at an OSAA delegate assembly advocating for high school boys volleyball in Oregon. The sport was unanimously approved as an emerging activity last year, and this year we're hoping that OSAA approves boys volleyball as an official high school sport next year. The ultimate goal today is to get as many athletic directors and PPS schools as possible on board and register their respective schools. I play on a club volleyball team, and I know there are many, many kids across the district who want to play. All it takes is one student at each school to spread the word, but it needs school support as well. Anything you can do as individuals or as a school board to help promote this effort would be greatly appreciated. Thank you to the school board for giving me the opportunity to speak about the importance and benefits of supporting boys volleyball and its journey to getting approved as an official sport in PPS schools. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Very well done. All right, next up we have general public comment. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have anyone signed up?
Yes. Tyler Willow, Dwayne Thomas, Susan Schlickler-Moen, Ricardo Ruiz.
As you all are making your way up, just kind of a quick reminder, I won't repeat the previous guidelines, but I just want to remind if there are PPS staff who are giving public comment that they may not provide testimony about students that could violate confidentiality protections under FERPA. This includes testimony using information that could identify students, especially in their school community, by use of their direct or indirect linkages such as school grade, special education, or other status. Thank you for making here today for public comment. You may begin.
Hi, I'm Taylor. My name is Taylorwallau, Taylor Wallow. Good evening. I'm here to read a comment which was written collaboratively on behalf of the community members who have been harmed by PPS policies and therefore may not have the capacity to attend these meetings. As a reminder, Palestinians have been under a brutal siege for 15 months. Infants are now dying of hypothermia and starvation each day, a clear sign of ethnic cleansing in action. Among hundreds of martyrs who have been killed with our tax dollars in the past 2 weeks alone are 5 Palestinian journalists. They were murdered in a clearly marked press van outside of Al-Auda Hospital while one was awaiting the birth of his child. This genocide did not begin on October 7th, but 77 years ago. and the imperial project of Israel has always been backed by other empires like the US, who rely on it as a proxy for Western interests. In Biden's words, if there were not an Israel, the US government would have to invent one to maintain its superpower status. So why is it that in a nation defined by imperialism, our schools refuse to provide students with an education on this subject? We encourage everyone in this room to familiarize yourself with the PPS genocide education timeline. In it, you will find an established pattern of repression, censorship, and neglect. The most recent iteration of this pattern is an administrative directive on art and other visual representations in district buildings, 330.040 AD, which was published in August 2024. It states, content on classroom walls, bulletin boards, and otherwise displayed in the classroom must be related to the curriculum. Those spaces cannot be used for an employee's personal expression, whether that is related to a political or personal issue. The district fails to define what constitutes a political or personal issue, and therefore subjects staff to discrimination by administrators. In effect, the directive legitimizes the discriminatory, racist, Zionist censorship by administrators in the 2023 to 24 school year that had not before been backed by policy. Using this directive, the district has cracked down even harder this year, not just on Palestine-related curriculum, but any public display of support for Palestine. A PPS teacher of color was told to remove a shirt with the statement, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and given a replacement shirt. The teacher received an email from their principal that included a forwarded directive for administrators to ban staff from wearing clothing with the words, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which is in fact a call for an end to the genocide and occupation of Palestine. A white teacher wore the same shirt at the same school and never received redirection. District employees know what they're doing, which is why they heavily redact emails related to this topic when they comply with public records requests. There are no more universities in Gaza. There are no open schools. Just as the U.S. government has always attempted to erase the histories of Black people and indigenous populations, Israel and the U.S. are actively attempting to erase the humanity of Palestinians in Palestine and the diaspora. Rather than ensuring access to exploitative military careers via the JROTC, this board should ensure access to a liberatory education. Until then, we'll continue to voice our demands to this board. Condemn the genocide in Palestine, protect SWANA community members, and let us teach Palestine.
The others that were called.
Do you want me to recall their names?
Yes, please.
Dwayne Thomas, Susan Schlickler-Moen, and Ricardo Ruiz.
Last call. I guess they figured out there are better things to do on Tuesday night. All right. Next up, we have our union partners. I believe PAT President Bonilla is here. And do we have any others?
Oh, jingling all over the place. Hello, board and superintendent. Thank you so much for having me. As always, I want to start off with kudos. And I'd like to give a kudos to Trinice Brown Warrens and the entire Markham staff for their return to their building after almost a full year at Jackson Middle School. They had a lot of work to do, and they even had one extra day after we came back from winter break to prepare for their students. So their classrooms are ready to welcome kids. When we toured the building before winter break, as they were still fixing things and, putting whiteboards up, there were several whiteboards that still had the schedule from January from the December before the storm that shut down their school. So it was quite emotional to be over there and see these spaces that they had poured so much into now rebuilt. So I'm just very excited for them, and kudos for all the work their principal did to get them back in their building and get them the supports and supplies that they need, as well as all the staff and educators who put in the work to welcome their students. I wanted to first off just speak to the bond very quickly. I am very much in support of us having a bond and our city passing a bond for our high schools and for the improvements that are necessary to maintain healthy and safe schools for our students. I understand that the bond is written in a way that would allow for the buildings to be built with the same specs, as close to on budget as possible. And if there is anything left over, that buildings will be improved. And so we're hoping folks can get everything they can at a reasonable price so we can improve some of our other buildings, but wanting to make sure that our Cleveland community and our Ida B. Wells community get the same high quality educational experience and school that all of our other high schools did, and maybe even a little bit better, because I know there's some things we'd like to improve, I think is crucial. And so I look forward to them getting the same, if not better, than all of our other schools, and hoping that we can do it on or under budget so that we can improve our other schools that are really struggling. You know, I understand some folks' concerns about the costs and the bond and why are we asking our community to fund this. And I want to remind folks that I think everyone would love to not have a bond to see if we can have a quality public education building for our students. We'd like to just get that money from the state. But because of Measure 5 and Measure 50, this is the route we have to take. And our city and our community has consistently voted to give our students, our educators, and our staff the school facilities that they need. And so I look forward to seeing them do that again with this bond. And I think there is also a light at the end of the tunnel. The governor's proposed budget and the press release shared that the strike we had in our city really made them understand the urgency behind the issue with school funding. She is asking for billions more, and I know our district and our union, PAT, are going to be advocating for fully funding to the quality education model, because we have to ask high to get what we need. And so I do, for the first time, have a little bit of hope that I haven't had in a while. And I have hope that we can get a fully funded school system. And I have hope that we can have our visual and performing arts educators, our PE educators, our career and technical education providers able to stay or increase their staffing over the next few years. And I hope that our community will pass this bond to support all of our students and educators. But hope for me is not something that is passive. It is an active thing, right? So it comes only with work and dedication. So it's time for all of us to get to work, to be in Salem advocating for those funds, advocating for a removal of the special education cap on funding so that we can actually provide the services our students are entitled to legally, as well as free up funds for all of our students to get the education that they deserve. So I'm looking forward to getting to work with all of you so that we can get great public schools for every Portland student. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bonilla. All right. Next up, we have the resolution to affirm rights of undocumented students and protocol for immigration and custom enforcement, ICE, access to schools. Our first action item this evening is the resolution to affirm the rights of undocumented students and protocols for immigration and custom enforcement, also known as ICE, access to schools. Vice Chair DePass, would you like to introduce this resolution?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Wong. One of the reasons that I requested that the board consider passing a resolution which affirms one that the board passed in 2016 is that we know that upcoming changes in immigration enforcement may lead to concern and feelings of uncertainty for some of our students and families. We want our students to feel safe and our administrators and staff to feel safe in our buildings, and that's why this is coming before the board. Superintendent Armstrong, would you like to speak to this?
Right, absolutely, and I appreciate that the issue is raised, and there is a potential for increased activity involving our immigrant students and their families, and so we have Chief of Staff, Dr. John Franco, and Chief of Schools, I'm sorry. Okay, I just put you in another position, I'm sorry, Deborah. Chief of Schools, Dr. John Franco, and Dr. Renard Adams, our Chief Accountability and Equity Officer, to share with you how we are supporting our students and families at this time.
Great, thank you. Good evening, directors, student director. As a staff, we are recommending to adopt Resolution 730, which is by its nature similar to the Resolution 5363 that the board adopted in 2016. With the potential for increased activity involving our immigrant students and families, we reviewed Resolution 5363 and updated it to reflect current practices. Resolution 7030 is the result. Under Resolution 7030, PPS will follow all applicable laws, including the laws designating schools as sanctuaries for students. PPS staff have been active in conversations with community partners, including Multnomah County, MESD, Legal Aid, Latino Network, ACLU, and also the Mexican Consulate, and other jurisdictions as well as other districts to coordinate around messaging so that our families and students know their rights. PPS has sent letters to families and staff acknowledging the concern and distributing information and resources. You're all sent copies of this correspondence. If you didn't get it or if you need it to be resent, please let me know or Roseanne. That'd be great. We have also posted information and resources on our website. We have and will conduct trainings with senior directors of schools and assistant superintendents, with school administrators, with PFSP staff, front office staff especially. Other school-based trainings will include counselors, college career coordinators, community agents, potentially even PTAs, those types of things, anybody who has direct contact with students. District Legal Counsel, that includes Mary Kane, in partnership with the Office of Student Support Services and Safety and Security, are taking the lead on these trainings, and also General Counsel Sharon Tancre. So with that, I don't know if Dr. Adams, you have anything to add,
You said it all.
but Dr. Adams and I, and also Sharon Tancre, are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Before we discuss, let's put this on the table. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 7030, resolution to affirm rights of undocumented students and protocols for immigration and customs enforcement access to schools?
So moved.
Second.
Director DePass moves and Director Holland seconds. Is there any board discussion or questions?
I just have a question. I heard you mention PTAs, and so would the district be providing training all across the spectrum of people that need training, including PTAs?
Yeah, that was a conversation that we had just this past week with senior directors as we were talking about who were kind of the student-facing level folks that we needed to potentially provide trainings for. So if that were the case, then it would be yes. Also, we'd be very specific too, given the populations of students where we know they're potentially where this could come up, and we'd prioritize that.
That'd be great. It'd be great to have some in different languages if that's helpful. And also, a train the trainer might be helpful.
Yeah.
So you're not doing these one-off trainings, rather you're training a group of people that can then serve as community advocates. Thank you.
So, yeah, I do. I have something to say. I wasn't on the board when the original one was done. I was actually teaching a group of girls basketball, 7th grade girls basketball team. and and I never played basketball, so that tell you how low the bar was. And when the climate has changed, I remember those girls coming in to practice crying. The fear that they had, the uncertainty that they had, you can see it in their face. And we're talking about kids, right? And, that was a profound effect on me because I'm looking at these girls that I have been coaching for a year and a half now, or 2 years now. They were seventh graders. And it was devastating. We really had to sit down and talk. And so I think, I wrote a little something out. I think this is a travesty that we even need a resolution like this. Protecting our kids, all of our kids should be a given. This should not even be necessary. Every child, regardless of immigration status, has the right to feel safe, respected, and supported in our schools. Yet here we are, forced to reaffirm basic humanity and protect students from fear of enforcement agencies that have no place in our classrooms or our schools. Let's be clear, this resolution is not about politics. This is about doing what is right. And I am delighted. When I seen it come up, my heart smiled. I'm delighted that we're standing for children when they need us the most. Because when you look in those kids' eyes, as I did when I was coaching them, it's something that I wish no kid ever have to encounter or go through. So I just want to thank us for doing this and know that we're going to do whatever we can to protect our students, period.
Did you win any games?
We actually won the CYO championship
Nice.
that year, yes. I was co-coach, so I don't want to take all the credit.
Go ahead, Dr. Sullivan.
Oh, no, I was just ready to say yes.
Yeah. I just want to say, during this era, if it does get tough again, just remember to have moments of grace. I remember as a teacher, I had a student who, after this happened first time, was late every class. And I remember asking why, trying to, assuming that something was going on. And it was because the kid had to take care of the family, do the groceries, cook all the breakfasts for all the other kids because they're afraid that one of the caretaker of the house, the grandma, would be deported. So even if the students are not, it does impact the family. I just have a quick question. Is it possible to just get a really brief bullet points about the differences between this resolution and the previous resolution it's replacing? Just a quick highlight.
Yeah, what I would say is if you look at the current resolution 730, I would say there's more specifics around not only federal law but Oregon law in particular. A lot of citations from that vantage point, and it's more specific. I think if you look at the previous resolution, which I have now, it is not as specific, and so that's what I appreciate about this current one.
Thank you. Thank you for putting all the work in this. Any other board discussion or questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I know you shared training will happen for teachers and educators and other staff. Will it also include community partners?
Yes. And Dr. Adams could talk a little bit more about that. But the pieces like with the family engagement as well, that's where we really would want our community partners to be involved, because there are pieces that we're doing with staff, but the community pieces are where we would want our community partners to be really forward-facing with them.
Yes, we fully intend to provide training to our, community partners and provide them with the same level of resources that we're providing the schools, because they are running programming in our schools, often after school and after hours.
And we're talking about like know your rights types of meetings with the community.
Great. Thank you for your work. The board will now vote on Resolution 7030, resolution to affirm rights of undocumented students and protocols for immigration and customs enforcement access to schools.
Chair
All in
Wong.
favor, please indicate by saying
Chair
yes.
Wong. I'm
Oh.
sorry to interrupt. We do have public comment on this topic.
Oh, thank you. My bad. Public comment?
We have Magali Rabasa and Ana Araujo, which I probably said wrong. I'm sorry.
My name is Magali Rabasa, Rabasa. I'm a parent at Beaumont Middle School and Rigler Elementary, where I'm also the chair of Equity and Advocacy for Padres Unidos de Rigler, our school PTA. I'm the daughter of immigrants, a bilingual educator, and a proud resident of the Cully neighborhood in Northeast Portland.
Yeah, Cully.
In mid-December, fellow parent Anna and I circulated an open letter to you all and to other PPS leaders. In that letter, we called for urgent action to protect undocumented students and their families in light of the incoming federal administration's anti-immigration stance. The letter was signed by over, as of today, 473 PPS community members, including staff, administrators, parents, caregivers, students, and neighbors, representing nearly 70 schools across the district. These almost 500 signatories, which included several school PTA boards, shared our concern about PPS's apparent silence on the rights of undocumented students in the wake of the November 5th federal election. While we were very encouraged by the communication released by PPS just before the winter break and the draft resolution significantly that was presented here tonight, we remain concerned because of the urgency for preparing for whatever policies, executive orders, or actions may come following the inauguration of the incoming president, which, as we all know, is in just 13 days. We're here tonight to speak in support of Resolution 7030. While we trust that you will all vote to support this and approve this resolution, we want to emphasize what we believe are two essential and urgent points related to that resolution. The first is this. While the policies outlined in this resolution are vital, PPS must immediately take action to commit adequate resources and energy to ensure the robust and rapid implementation of item number 5 of the resolution, which states that PPS will, and I quote, provide training and guidance to school staff with the assistance of community partners on how to respond to ICE personnel who are requesting information about PPS staff, students, and families, and or attempting to enter PPS property, end quote. In November 2016, the board approved a similar resolution, as we've heard about tonight, 5363, which stipulated a concrete time frame. This is one of the biggest distinctions between the two resolutions, which stated that within 90 days, the development of such a plan for training would be enacted. We're concerned by the absence of such language in the new resolution and urge the board to move swiftly to make a public commitment to a timeline for this essential training and guidance work. The second point, item number 5 also states that, quote, the district will provide information about rights and protections and support for possibly impacted families. PPS must immediately take action to support community and immigrant-led education and mutual aid efforts related to rights, and do so in a manner that promotes understanding that the protection of undocumented students and families is a matter of collective care and is a shared responsibility that must not fall solely on the potentially impacted community. Knowing the rights of undocumented immigrants is everyone's responsibility. So we're here to ask tonight, how will Resolution 7030, and especially item number 5, be enacted? When, specifically, and with what resources will staff and families receive the training, guidance, and education necessary to make this resolution effective? We're grateful to hear some of that, but we really want to insist that PPS must materially reaffirm its pronounced commitment to racial equity and social justice by nurturing and creating an explicitly pro-immigrant, anti-racist school district with the full implementation of this resolution. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ana Araujo, Araujo. I am a parent at Creston Elementary and Sunnyside Environmental School. I am the child of immigrants as well, and who both worked in my local public school district in service sector jobs. I am a resident of Southeast Portland and have taught for more than a decade about issues of cultural diversity and social inequality. Like my fellow parent, Magali, I am here tonight to speak in support of Resolution 7030. While we trust that you will all vote to approve this resolution, we again want to draw attention to item number 5 in the resolution. In particular, we want to ask what concrete plans and material commitments the district has made to ensure that all PPS staff receive the necessary training and guidance to make every school site a safe space of learning and work for everyone. As a public institution dedicated to education, PPS has the skills, resources, and infrastructure in place to implement a widespread education and training about relevant rights, policies, and practices. A resolution on its own will do very little. What we need is a robust and urgent plan of action to make every school building a site of preparedness, awareness, and community safety as we enter the new political climate that will be formally ushered in on January 20th. Policies and resolutions are only effective if they are backed by material resources and concrete commitments to action. Resolution 7030 is an important statement of the district's commitments, but it will only be effective if the education, training, and preparation outlined in item number 5 is prioritized and deployed immediately and fully. Outward-facing policies that affirm PPS's power to resist ICE's incursion into our communities and schools are important. But what is more impactful is the difficult and resource-intensive inward-facing work of educating, training, and preparing our schools to protect, defend, and uplift the immigrant families that are integral to PPS. PPS must materially reaffirm its pronounced commitment to racial equity and social justice by nurturing and creating an explicitly pro-immigrant, anti-racist school district with the full implementation of Resolution 7030. By doing so, PPS will assert our community-level commitment to Oregon's status as a sanctuary state and align our district with a national movement towards sanctuary for undocumented community members. Thank you.
Thank you both.
I'm wondering if we could ask John to come back and say what is actually being done specifically.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Franco, are you being recalled?
So I'm happy to talk right now specifically about some of the things that are currently happening, and then we'll get back to you with more specifics in regards to more details, because right now we're also identifying, like I said, pertinent other folks, including PTAs, community agents, those types of things. So we first are starting off, guidance counselors have been trained, counselors have been trained, college and career coordinators. We had a training with senior directors and assistant superintendents. This Thursday, we're having a principal training and all building leaders within cohorts. The expectation is that they're going to deliver that training school-wide. And then other pertinent pieces will happen with other pertinent stakeholders, as I mentioned. And I'll get more details to you in regards to who those people are and what that timeline looks like.
Thank you. And I also saw that there's been some intergovernmental work as well done. Yes, just want to highlight that. Any other? Yep, I think we're all excited to get this on the table. There's no more public comment, correct? Correct, not correct? Okay. All right, the board will now vote on Resolution 7030. Resolution to affirm the rights of undocumented students and protocols for immigration and customs enforcement access to schools. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Are there any abstentions? Student Representative Consavi, please indicate your vote.
A strong yes.
Nice, a very strong yes. With a vote of 7-0, with a very strong yes from Student Representative Consavi, unofficially voting yes. We have passed this. Thank you, everyone. I'm clapping. All right, next we have the resolution authorizing the operating agreement between with Albina Vision Trust. We will be voting on this on February 20, 2024. The Portland Public Schools Board of Education approved Resolution 6861, authorizing PPS to prepare for the sale of the Dr. Matthew Prophet Education Center. Resolution 6861 directed that a timeline be developed to identify a new headquarters and new warehouse site within 12 months that could be acquired on, among other terms, in cost neutral to PPS basis, so that AVT could ultimately acquire the 10.5 acre PEC site in transaction that meets or exceeds the appraised value of the PEC. Resolution 6861 also directs that within 60 days, minimum criteria for the new headquarters and new warehouse sites be created. Resolution 6861 also required a joint creation of a work plan with AVT to fulfill the objectives of the resolution. Dr. Armstrong, would you like anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add that our staff has worked diligently over the first 60 days, and it was clear that we needed additional expertise and work was needed to determine the minimum criteria. So we're continuing in hopes that we'll be able to identify new locations soon, and we have staff here to report out further. So thank you for being here.
So tonight we have Resolution 7024, which authorizes us for the operating agreement with Albina Vision Trust. We have been working really closely with AVT over the last several months, determining what our needs are and what other school districts do, and really trying to make sure we're making the right decisions for the long run. So that work's been ongoing. We're right in the thick of it right now. We'll be coming back with report outs on that in the not too distant future. So we're very excited to hopefully get the operating agreement authorized tonight so we can continue to move on as this governs our working relationship.
Sorry, let's get this on the table. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 7024, resolution authorizing the operating agreement with Albina Vision Trust?
Second. Motion. Second. Let's just do it.
Thank you. Director Green moves. Do I have a second? Director Holland seconds.
You're waiting for you. I thought y'all was ready.
It's too late for these kind of games. Is there any board discussion? Questions?
I have a quick comment. Just when this building was renamed, a group of Black community members advocated for the name to remain if there was ever a time that the building moved, and I would like to just elevate that. That was an ask, a strong ask, knowing that this building probably wasn't going to be here forever, that the name transfer to any new location. So I'd just like to elevate that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ms. Bradshaw, is there any
I
public?
actually have a couple questions. Just for clarification, the minimum requirements and the desired features, PPS will set both of those and approve the board?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Then I had a question. I asked this in advance, but I'm not quite sure I understood the answer. If this is a full cost replacement, the FF&E, which is things used for everyday operations, that those would be covered. But my question was more around when you go deep into this building, there's lots of very customized, built-in features like our covered loading docks, the sort of paint bins, and a whole host of other things, primarily in the operations side. And those would not be considered, they're not desks or copiers. The all-in cost, the new facility that they're going to cover the cost of would have all those, the functionality and those features?
Yes, it'll have the same functionality. It may not have exactly the same features. We may not need as many loading docks, for example. Whether or not they're covered is, that's not typical in Portland. But yes, all of the features, all of the components of the building that we need to carry out our daily operations.
And just a question, and then I'm going to go back to our original resolution night where we had a electrician who works in the building to come and speak. And I'm curious about, in the establishment of the minimum criteria and the desired features, how we're going to integrate the voices and the wisdom and experience that people use. Again, not the desks and everything, but the more operational equipment and features of the building. How are they going to be? Are they going to be part of setting the minimum criteria?
We're going through that. We're just starting that process right now to do the interviews with the department directors and their staff to the degree that's appropriate in whichever department it might be, to really understand how they use the space, what this building's been here for 50 years. What can we be doing differently or better, or what don't we have, that sort of thing, so we can really begin to understand at a much more detailed level what we actually need in order to do our operations every day. So yes, they will be involved.
Okay, and then my last question, because this again was part of the staff survey, the feedback. Are parking or the central location part of the minimum requirements?
Well, central location is definitely a minimum requirement. The question exactly where is central, right? Because that depends on exactly where you're at and how far you're going. And parking is an ongoing discussion. We know that we have a fair amount of parking here, and we are unlikely to be able to replicate this level of parking somewhere else, certainly not without additional cost. So we are looking at what is our need for parking, what about transit, is there ways for us to be able to support multimodal transportation efforts, things like that. So when we come back with that minimum criteria, we'll be addressing the parking as well.
Just to be sure, the board approves that. So those attributes will be in consideration, but ultimately the board is the body that approves the minimum criteria. They haven't been finalized yet.
Because my recollection is the staff survey had parking in the central location as the number one issues.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I had a comment also that stuck out to me, the FF&E, the fixtures, furnishings, and equipment. And I'm pretty sure we're not going to bring desks from 1970 over to a new spot. So that means new furnishings, but then I hope that we're mindful about what we do with all the old furnishings, because there's a lot of carpet and desks and equipment and furnishings here that will hopefully have second lives somewhere. I hope that if we've got like a high-end, like the steel case and that type of equipment, that we can do their buyback programs and do the most sustainable, we're going to have a big pile of things to get rid of here. So I hope it's done in the most sustainable, environmentally sustainable way.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say something before we close out, but I'm never going to say something before the student because he's smarter than me.
Thank you. For clarity, will the headquarters and the warehouse be two separate locations, or will they be together?
Hasn't been fully decided yet. We're finding it difficult to find a place where they can be co-located. That would obviously be, that would be fantastic if we could do that. Probably hard to do in the city to be as centrally located as we need to be, as well as have both operations and the administrative side together. That would be the goal, but most likely, in all honesty, it'll be two locations.
I just want to, and maybe someone can help me understand. In light of everything that we're asking for, all this stuff, we can't afford to keep this building. This building is going to fall down. It's not fully sustainable. We don't have enough money coming in to continue to make all the maintenance requests and stuff that need to be done with this building. If I'm wrong, I'm just trying to put this out there so that I can get a better understanding. But it is my understanding that we need to do something or we need to invest a lot of money into getting this building where it needs to be at in order for us to continue to stay here, which we don't have the money to do. So as much as we're sitting here talking about what about this and what about that, we need to poop or get off the pot, because this building will fall down. It is not going to stay. It is not sustainable. We can't financially afford to continue to keep dumping money into a building that we know is going to be a sieve where it's just going to be bleeding out. So we can't save it unless we're prepared to tear it down and start all over ourselves. We're not in a position to do that. So we need to hurry up, in my humble opinion, start figuring out how to work with someone who wants to work with us so that we can get the things that we need to get, so that there can be a win-win for everyone involved. Or we need to stop talking about it, and we need to get a lot more money together so that we can tear this building down ourselves and rebuild it back up in the magnificent way that we see, this building and it being, because I don't see another way. And so I just want to make sure that we put that out there for everyone to understand. All of my colleagues, all of my friends, I love y'all. We can go eat and all that other kind of stuff, but this building will fall down, and we don't have the money to keep it from falling down. So we need to figure out what we're going to do. We need to get enthusiastic about working with people that want to work with us, and so that we can find a space where we can actually call home and it can benefit the community. And that's my little humble opinion. I just wanted to put that out there.
I just want to ask one question. Piggyback what Director Green said. It's not going to fall down right now, right?
8:05 probably.
No, I was just joking.
You can always count.
Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comment?
No.
No. Thank you for participation and hard work. The board will now vote on Resolution 7024, resolution authorizing the operating agreement with Albina Vision Trust. All in favor, please?
I'm sorry, Chair Wong. Did you have a motion in a second?
Yeah, I thought
Oh,
we
excuse
had
me.
I second the motion.
There was a second, then there was a first, and then there was something over here. It is on the table. Thank you.
All right, back to business. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Representative Kasabi, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 7024 is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Kasabi unofficially voting yes. Next up, we have the second reading of the student use of electronic devices policy. We're now we'll be voting on that today. Hopefully, I am excited to hopefully finalize this process. I want to thank Policy Committee Chair Britt Edwards for your work on this and the extra time you made for public comment during our Policy Committee meetings. Do I have let's put this on the table. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 7029, resolution to adopt student use of personal electronic devices in schools?
So moved.
Second.
Director Britt Edwards moves. Yeah. And Director Green seconds. Is there any board discussion?
I have something I wrote for this as well. And I'm going to always advocate for our students, whether I agree with what they're saying or not. I do believe, their voices need to be broadcasted and amplified. So I'm saying when we talk and create policies that truly benefit our students, we cannot overlook the power of their voice. After all, they're the ones navigating the realities of our educational systems every day. By actively involving them in the process, we do more than just gather input. We send a message that their perspectives are valid, their experiences matter, and they play a vital role in the decisions that will shape their futures. Students bring unique viewpoints informed by their diverse background, challenges, and aspirations. Their ideas have the potential to identify gaps in our system and propose solutions that are more practical, equitable, and effective. Furthermore, including students in policy making empowers them with a sense of ownership over their educational journey. It fosters a culture of engaged participation where they understand that their involvement in shaping policy isn't just a right, but a responsibility. It also provides us with a clear picture of what is working and what isn't, ensuring that policies aren't created in a vacuum, but are grounded in lived experiences of those that they are meant to serve. So I just say, let's embrace the value of our students' collective voice, because when we listen to our students, we build a system that reflects their needs, honors their voices, and prepares them for a brighter, more inclusive future. And the reason why I say that is because when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones, and so I don't know how many of us, on this board as adults had cell phones in schools, but if they're giving us their lived experiences, we should make sure that we really pay attention and listen to their shared experiences, because we are not living their shared experiences. That's it.
I know that the students all know that I'm for the cell phone away all day. And I've had numerous students email me, and by the way, we're teaching students how to write very good persuasive essays. And I've had also some phone calls, and from my good friend here, who I respect very much, trying to talk me out of it. We started this because teachers came to us, and they were so frustrated. And there were teachers who were trying to keep them out, keep the cell phones out of the classroom. It wasn't working. Everything they did wasn't working. And they said, please make a policy that we can, so we can teach. So we don't have to spend our whole time telling people to put away their cell phones. So I am still voting yes on the all day. If I thought it would work to have them, let the students have them and just say, I'm going to keep it away all day except when I'm at lunch. If I really thought that would happen, I would change my vote, but I don't think it will happen because teachers have tried that already this year. It's not happening. So anyway, that's where I stand. Student voice, I have listened. I've listened and listened, and I've seen really good arguments. But I still think for the sake of the education of all of our children, we need to get those cell phones out of the classroom.
Thank you. I would just like to share something really quick, because I've been in contact also with North Clackamas School District, and they were very gracious in sending me some of their data that they've gotten. So this was just, if you know from North Clackamas, they've banned phones. They're a little bit ahead of us. I also want to clarify that this policy is just a policy. It's just a direction. It doesn't tell the district how to do something. That's up for the district to decide how it wants to implement it, and each school for to decide how to implement it. But the presentation that North Clackamas gave in their board meeting, if you know anything about North Clackamas, beginning of the year they banned phones all day, every day, or through the school day. The presentation actually started out with a quote from a student, and the quote from the student says, "This, I'll just read it. This has actually been pretty cool. My friends and I are actually now talking to each other in the hallway between classes. Last year we would just come out and be on Snap, and then the bell would ring, and we wouldn't even have spoken to each other. I actually get to talk to my friends now." Now, just to kind of show you off my age, I have no idea what Snap is.
I was going to ask for a translation.
Yeah, I need a translation on this. So just kind of sharing some preliminary data. Again, I say preliminary because they collected this in October. So this is only a month into school, right? September and then October, so almost 2 months. They said their data showed that disruptive conduct was down 25%. Fighting was down 50%, harassment down 13%, and substance abuse down 35%. They also saw a reduction in chronic absenteeism. They also showed 86% of their students not using their phones throughout the day. 31.4% of students report increased social interactions between classmates. And 26% of students report, this is student surveys, by the way, student reports increased ability to focus and learn better. 50% of students also reported they had more time with their teachers and students to teach and learn. So teachers, saying that teachers actually had more time to teach and learn, interact with students basically. So this is just kind of, again, this is just a month in, and this is kind of one of the things I just want to share, because we have this argument, and one of the things is that, like Director Sullivan brought up, one of the reasons we brought this up or are pushing for this is because teacher burnout is an all-time high. After COVID, there's been an increased dependence on phone use, and for good or bad, there's been impact in the classroom, and this is a reaction to that. But it is also the main purpose of doing this is focusing on student achievement. Recently, I shared with the rest of the board, or a lot of people, there was a study done by Ward in the University of Chicago et al. Called Brain Drain. It was done on college students, because of college students and their cognitive ability. And the closer their phones were to them, the worse they did on cognitive ability. They compared to college students, by the way, whether it was in their pocket, whether it was off in their pocket, whether it was on silence in their pocket, whether it was on their desk or in a separate room, and they showed it was a significant decline in cognitive performance the closer it was to them and the more easily accessible it was. So again, the point of the policy is it is focused on student achievement. It is also focused on teachers and being able to teach. Again, it is a policy. There's flexibility built in the policy so that the district can respond to changes in issuances, which is why in good governance it's important to make sure that the policy is built in it, not necessarily general, but written in a flexible way. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
I want to thank Director Brent Edwards for, you take on the tough challenges, and this is almost as hard as dog parks in the 1990s in the Parks Bureau. That was tough. And this is a tough one too. And I struggled with this personally, kind of going back and forth, and after the break I was like, okay, just let the students decide, whatever. But my heart is telling me different, and I'm going to also vote yes for an off and away all day. It's going to be hard to enforce, yes, but the data is clear on distraction, and the cost of switching is great. The data from law enforcement is clear. These do not make you safer. In fact, in an emergency, you need to be hyper-focused on a trained adult in the room, not on the phone, putting it on Instagram or calling your mom. You need to, it's literally a safety issue to be on your phone in an active emergency. And the current system isn't working. It's not working for the teachers. And I say if we put this in place and it's really bad a year from now and people are suffering and you can't call your mom and ask if you want pasta or rice then let's go back. But for now, I want to be outcome focused on, I want to give it a try because I think it will increase outcome and social engagement. And I, as a responsible adult, I feel compelled to vote yes for this because I think it will help. I think it'll help student outcomes, it'll help socialization, and everybody will be fine without a phone for 6 hours. We can survive that.
Appreciate everybody's comments and also the really active engagement by all the board in the creation of this policy. As the policy committee chair, we spent about 6 months on this. We had lots of community input, hundreds of comments from staff, parents, and students. There was broad agreement that we needed district-wide policy. So I think that what I'm going to try and focus on tonight is where there was broad agreement that we needed district-wide policy so that policies didn't vary from school to school. The discipline didn't vary from school to school. It didn't vary from classroom to classroom. That in a PPS classroom, the place for your phone was off and away. So I'm really glad that we, on that overarching topic of what was best for students, there was broad agreement. I also want to highlight one place where there was not broad agreement, and that was in relationship to high school students, not middle school students, but high school students not having access to their phones during lunchtime. And part of this process, I say we had a significant amount of feedback and a survey from teachers. But I want to just give a shout out to last year's and this year's student reps for pushing for a student survey, and Dr. Adams, who worked with the students to conduct both the survey and also some student roundtables. That we had broad participation from students, 2,147 student responses to our requests for students to weigh in. And I'm really proud of our students because they actually were part of that universal agreement that phones should be off and away during class time. So our students realize the benefit of having their phones away, not being distracted, focusing on teaching and learning. They also advocated for appropriately serious and consistently enforced consequences for if phones were used, and they were supportive of this as a way to encourage adherence to the policy. What they did not agree with was the lack of access to their phones during non-instructional time. And you know, I wish the outcome tonight of the policy. I'm going to be supportive of it, but I wish the outcome of the policy had been inclusive of the student's point of view in terms of letting them have access to their phone. As a parent of 3, I do think there's lots of legitimate reasons during this school day to check in on work, on childcare, on coordinating with others. I also think that there are times when our students, when they're off campus, need to have their phones when they're driving somewhere, and that makes our students safer. I don't think they need it in the classroom, but I do think there are other times. So there was a split vote on that, and the decision was that they'd be off and away all day. I didn't agree with that, but again, I'm going to support the policy. I do want there to, I know supporting the policy and implementing it are two different things, but I want us to be very cautious about the way this is implemented. We have students who are out and about downtown, all different neighborhoods in this city, and as a parent, I would feel more comfortable for my student having access to their phone when they're off campus. When I raised this at the last meeting, the response was they can just rip it open. So I'm gonna pass this down, and I know you're super strong, but you can't just rip it open. And so, is there somebody who's gonna rip it open?
No, I was laughing because Ailey's here tonight.
Oh, and you beat her in arm wrestling.
We're still talking about that 4 years later.
It's like 5 now.
5 years later.
But you can't rip this open.
Yeah.
I did not wrestle.
So, you know, this you know, if a student's phone is in his house, they're off campus, and they need their phone, they can't just rip it open. So let's just be clear about that. So I'm not a fan of this being the solution, and I know that we're not voting on that tonight, or the expenditures of funds would go to one company that has a monopoly on the current technology. Again, because I know there's other ways to keep phones off and away during the school day. So I'd just be very careful about our advocacy and what we're saying, you know, what students can do, because when I asked several people to open this, their response when they couldn't open it was, well, if I got my knife out. And I'm like, okay.
Or if you have TikTok.
I normally carry a pocket knife. I'm just saying, I get that.
Well, that's, exactly. So, again, we're not talking tonight about that expenditure or how it's going to be implemented, but I would hope that's a whole separate conversation because not only are our resources scarce, but I think there's implications for our students when they're not on campus, when they don't have access to a phone. But I'm going to be a yes. And again, I want to thank everybody who shared their point of view and for students really participating in the discussion and making your voices heard.
I think before I share my thoughts, I'd like to give an opportunity to Superintendent Armstrong to share her thoughts about this topic. Sorry.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, yeah, it's a tough one for me. I think what I will say, what I have said privately, what I've said publicly, is that when we ask for input and feedback from our students, that we should listen. I don't support the off and away during lunch, so I guess it would be not the off and away all day. I do believe that students should have access to the devices as long as we are an open campus school district for lunch, then our students should have the devices. I also take that position. I support, obviously, all of the research and all of the information that was collected. I think what was most compelling to me is hearing from our district administrators who sat with each of our principals and shared their concerns about the supervision and management of cell phones during lunch and the amount of resources that would go towards making sure that students do not have devices. And quite honestly, policing or monitoring if students have a phone during lunch or off campus, I don't think is our priority. I support the work about removing distractions in the classrooms during the day, and I'm super excited to see what will be the result with increased achievement, increased focus, the opportunity to protect the learning environment for our teachers. And I think all of that is 100% spot on in the right work. I just don't see how lunch is considered a learning environment. And so I'm not a voting person in this. I appreciate you turning the mic over to me, and I don't mind being put on the spot. I will always say what I believe to be true. And so I guess as it moves forward, it seems as if there's already some decisions. And I will say, and I apologize for this, I say this respectfully, I know that we still have public comment, and so it is slightly concerning to hear people take positions before we've offered other people to come to the mic, because it seems as if the mind has been already made up, and I just want to protect the public process. If we say that this is the place where people can come and get feedback, then we ought to make sure that we pause and hear that feedback. But whatever the case is, we will move forward in any direction that the board gives to make sure that we establish resources and appropriate support for our students and staff in the implementation of whatever policy is adopted.
Director Scott?
Step in front of student rep. Do we want to actually do public comment as well? I'm happy to.
You want to do it now?
I'm happy to do whatever you want me to do.
Before you give
Sure.
your comment?
To the superintendent's
Are you
point.
finished? After public comment. All right, Ms. Bradshaw, we have public comment, I'm pretty sure, right?
We do have public comment.
All right. Let's call them up.
All right. Kaylee Lynn, Jorge Sanchez Bautista, Ian Retorto, Maya Puello Van Gelder.
On the opposite side, but
Opposite side, but still together.
but still friends.
Yeah. I'm not going first. I'll make that clear.
Sorry?
Yeah, I can absolutely go first. Let me just make sure this is in the right position. Am I good to go? Hello, my name is Ian Retorto, R-I-T-O-R-T-O, and I'm a district student council representative at Roosevelt High School. I believe that the off and away policy during class time is the most effective way to handle phones. Firstly, I'd like to talk about enforcement and viability. To enforce something like an all-day phone ban would require a large amount of resources that would be ineffective. Yonder pouches are extremely effective, and even if the schools came up with an alternative system where they would check phones at the front or take them away when they see them, it would still require both substantial physical and human resources. Just imagine the logistical nightmare. And we can't just find it in the budget and push it onto schools to support one of these systems either, due to the equity problem. When this happens, the burden usually falls much harder on Roosevelt, Jefferson, and their feeder schools because they have less resources. Secondly, I'd like to bring up safety. Many students go off campus for lunch, and phones are an incredible safety tool that we'd be rash to take away. Additionally, kids deserve the right to have their phones in the event of a school shooting, which are becoming frightfully common these days, considering Roosevelt had a shooting just outside the school last year and Jefferson had multiple. I'd like to tell my family I love them before I get shot, and I'm sorry if that's not supported by some statistics from the police department, but I feel that very strongly in my heart. Locking phones is an enormous safety hazard for that reason. Thirdly, I'd like to bring up the educational use of phones and why it needs to be up to teacher discretion. In my leadership class, phones are an integral part of our classwork. We need to post TikToks, film clips for our announcements, and many other things. In some classes, phones can be a very useful learning tool, which is why it needs to be ultimately up to teachers, because they know what's right for their classes. We simply need to support teachers in their decision. The other day, a teacher that had previously been pretty lax on phones came back from a break and said, "I've changed my mind, and I'll give you a referral if I see it out." I did not see a single phone out all day. Additionally, I believe calculator caddies could be an effective solution that balances teacher discretion, safety, and feasibility. Lastly, I'd like to talk about passing periods and lunch. It would be all but impossible to enforce a phone ban during passing periods or lunch, on top of being pointless. And it's even harder to enforce for kids who go off campus, creating a huge equity issue for kids who have the means to go off campus for lunch. It drastically increases the resource requirement for very little to no benefit. Additionally, lunch is the only 30 minutes kids get every school day to themselves. And maybe you're an extrovert and of the opinion that kids should be forced to interact with each other. But what's next then? Will the board ban books during lunchtime? I think this is a major infringement on the freedom of kids. Phones are undoubtedly a problem in the classroom, but lunch is not learning time. You may have your personal thoughts on the impact of phones on society, but the fact is they are here to stay, and they're a significant part of kids' lives. Kids have their hobbies, interests, and lives on the internet, not to mention employment. It's not fair to take that away from them if it's not interfering with their learning. Not only does banning phone use during lunchtime not improve kids' learning, but it even hinders it. Lunch is where kids can cool down, reset, socialize, and get ready for the rest of the day. And the fact of the matter is that this break will be less effective without phones. May I finish my statement? Thus making learning less efficient for the rest of the day. An off and away policy during lunchtime with admin support and room for teachers' discretion is not only the most effective policy, but the most feasible as well. I know this has been a long fight, but it is not over. It's very hard to reverse or change a policy once adopted, so we need to make sure we get this right. I urge a very strong vote in the opposition so this policy can be amended to accurately represent the needs of the student and teaching body. Thank you.
I have to beat that. Good evening, Chair Wong, Vice Chair DePaz, Superintendent Armstrong, Legal Counsel, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Jorge Sanchez Bautista, Bautista. That part is usually messed up, so I'm putting that out there. I'm not here only as a McDaniel student, but also as a student advisor to the Oregon State Board of Education, where I represent students across the whole state, so you can imagine the amount of students that is. I first want to highlight the families from Cleveland and Wells that are here today to advocate for their schools, to make your voices heard, and to push the School Board Act. So thank you for showing up. Before I touch on the phone policy, though, I do want to mention something that Director Hollins mentioned about the resolution 7030. Me and Director Hollins both preside in the Cully neighborhood, where we both know that has a very large number of immigrant families and members, and so I appreciate that district staff brought this resolution forward and for you all passing it, so thank you for that. To touch on the district-wide phone ban, we know that it has been a conversation among students, teachers, our union partners, and of course our administrators, the ones that would be enforcing it, and that you have obviously provided student feedback, which, as Dr. Director Brim Edwards mentioned, had about Commissioner Director, had about 2,100 responses, and I gave you all a statement about last month, emphasizing again to reconsider, think of all their other alternatives due to student feedback from teachers, obviously not wanting to be any part of this with trying to enforce it, as their teachers, their job is to educate, not to enforce. That falls under the administrators, as well as the cost of things. As we all are aware, the $40 million deficit and ways that the school district is doing, going to the state, asking for funding, etc., especially with the $1.8 billion bond. And I'm again just suggesting for an alternative to it, especially with my friends and I know for sure. I know people at Cleveland, and not a single one of them actually puts their phone into that yonder pouch. I will tell you that right now. And I will tell you right now, in front of you all, if you were to enact this by next week or after spring break and you got me a yonder pouch, I'm gonna put a fake phone into it. I will tell you that right now, I'm not putting my fake phone. I can get detention, suspension, expulsion, whatever it stays on the student handbook, but I'm not putting my phone in that book. You first figure out, which I first have questions about, because Director Wrong, when you compare North Clackamas to PPS, you're looking at a good, very difference of students there. We're a bigger school district than North Clackamas. We have a bigger budget. We have more teachers and everything like that. And the other part is you have to kind of decide what you're going to go with. Is it yonder pouches? Is it going to be the lock box? Is it going to be the shoe things against the door? Where are you going to get the funds for that? Because from what I've got told from some of you is that you're still determining where those funds are going to come from. And then, again, the policy isn't quite clear on when this policy goes into effect. I'm a senior. I have 5 months left. Me and JJ have 5 months left. What's the point in enacting this policy now? Or beginning of next year? That's a question that a lot of students are curious about. When is the policy going to be enacted? It'll be nice if you figure out all these questions, so then students are actually more aware and you can have transparency on the issue.
Just for the record, I have worked in both North Clackamas and PPS, so I know the student population.
Just making you aware.
I'm glad that you pointed me out. Thank
Of course,
you.
sure.
Kaylee, go.
This is really long because I thought it was speech and debate where we had at least 5 minutes. So I might just have to wing it. But my main things I have to talk about are just generally what is best for students and budget and safety issues. I have a lot of friends that go to Cleveland and to Grant, and they always say that it's just so overkill, and it always it's just an inconvenience, and no one even follows it. They just put an old phone in the pouch, or they just say, I don't have my phone, and they and it's just annoying. They'll break the pouches, and that's such a waste of school money if they're just breaking the pouches, because this is some information I got from an article written by Issa Hale in our in Franklin. I go to Franklin. Our journalism class, they have a newspaper, and she wrote, yonder pouches cost $25 to $30 per student. Grant spent more than $60,000 on over 2,500 pouches after receiving a $20,000 discount for being a pilot school. according to a KGW sourced PPS purchasing order. That's such a crazy amount that we could use on like so many other things. Why is it used for something that seems so unnecessary because no one's gonna actually follow it? And the safety issue. The main safety issue everyone talks about is like the lockdowns and things. But the safety issue that I think about most is buses, because one of my friends frequently misses her buses because she is going to the back of her school to go unlock her phone and she misses her bus, which is fine because her bus is frequent service, but a lot of them aren't. So that could be a 30-minute to hour difference, which is a big deal in like the winter when the sun sets earlier, and that means you could be coming home at dark, and that's not really good in some areas. Sorry, this would be so much more smart if I had more time. I'm just rambling. My sister went to Grant in 2013 to 2017 when they still had access to mobile phones before there was a policy for it. And she says that it benefited them a lot to have their phones because they could use it for their classes and they could use it to connect with each other. People say that it's a social thing, that it makes it harder they said that like phones are detrimental to students' social lives, but I think that they're very important parts of students' social lives in the modern day, because like the main form of communication is their phones. I want to ask for my friend's phone number, but they can't use their phone in school, and so I can't talk to them outside of class, and so that friendship could be better, but it's not, because I can't talk to them outside of class, and that's so it like kind of goes like against what it's for, you know.
Thank you.
I have band practice that I'm already late for, so I'm sorry I have to leave this meeting now. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, thank you. You did a very good job. Sounded very smart.
Good evening. Happy New Year. My name is Maya Pueo Van Geldern, last name V-O-N, space capital G-E-L-D-E-R-N. I wanted to share my thoughts as a parent, volunteer, but also as a PPS substitute and Sun school teacher. I wanted to thank you, as I am in support of an off and away all-day rule for all grade levels. I believe that a simple, clear rule makes it easier to draw the line. It shouldn't be up to the teachers to have to constantly battle students throughout the day. We need a clear-cut policy that deals with the issues as a whole and a strong plan for implementation, and I'll get back to the implementation part at the end. I know students, both middle schoolers and high schoolers, who are responsible with phone use. I hate that they feel like they are being punished for those who aren't as responsible. And I know we're raising students to be able to go out into the world and make adult decisions, and that we are all, as adults, able to monitor our phone usage on our own. But if I could go back and train myself to be able to disconnect from my phone for 7 hours a day, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would do it faster than I could pick up my phone and swipe up to check for notifications. My hope is that we're setting up this next generation to be able to do so, but better than we are. I'm not exaggerating that it's an addiction. When I teach middle schoolers in Sun School and my students pull out their phones, I remind them they need to be off and away. They put them in their pockets and apologize. But then within seconds, they pull them back out and swipe up to check notifications without even realizing they're doing it. It is exhausting. It's consistent. And while trying to get through a lesson, only as an after-school program teacher, I can only imagine, and I have seen it, how hard it is for our teachers who are teaching every day, all day. Some teachers have that relationship with their students where they say off and away, or you're getting a referral and they are off and away. Some teachers don't have that relationship with their students and that authority to be able to do so, so it becomes an all-day battle. What I've experienced, seen, and heard from staff from around the district is that it's a constant battle. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. But not all have the relationship. I just said that. Sorry, I didn't get to go through this very much tonight. I know that there is a way to make sure cell phones are off and away all day, whether it ends up being yonder pouches or lock boxes. I don't have the answer, but I believe that it can happen. Many schools do enforce this all-day rule, and the restrictions work. I'm not saying yonder is the only answer, and I know that a $25 pouch adds up for every student. I get that. But PPS spends millions of dollars on tech that allows our students to have better, equitable access to learning, and I do believe that restricting phone access for the day is a way of giving our kids a better access to learning. The way the policy is written, it gives space for exceptions, and I want to say that not only do I believe exceptions should be made for IEPs and medical reasons, but I also believe that when students sign out to go off of campus, or when students are off campus during lunch, that there should be a way to have access to their phones, where cell phones don't help, but actually hinder emergency situations on campus. They are needed as a safety precaution for students while off campus. I also know this is a board policy, and the implementation is a long process, and so I just ask that we do this while including our students and our staff in the decision making. And I know that there's a way to do this without waving the white flag and surrendering to the constant pull of our cell phones. Thank you.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to give us public comment. Any further board discussions, comments, questions?
You want to have the last word, JJ?
You don't want to go?
Oh no, I'm happy. I'm happy to go. Give the student rep the last word. Yeah, just a few points in response. I appreciate the conversation. I honestly think we're taking ourselves a little too seriously. Like, I just want to point out that we're passing a board policy here, and there's I think there's a lot of, it's very reasonable to disagree about this one piece about during lunch and passing period versus not. We're all in agreement on like 80 or 90%. It's also a board policy. It can be changed at any board meeting in the future by any board member who wants to bring it forward. I also want to point out it's written in such a way, which I fully support, that the superintendent can change this through the implementation, because again, off and away throughout the school day, unless otherwise permitted under this policy or related administrative directive. So we're moving forward with, a majority of the board. I'm going to support this because I think it's the right thing to do this. But if it's not working, we'll just change it. So let's not get too caught up in what we're doing tonight and more think about what's going to be the most effective thing and watch that as we go forward. I do want to take a little bit of an issue with a couple of things people said, particularly around the student point of view. And I guess I just want to caution the adults who are disagreeing legitimately about sort of talking about whether we're including the student's point of view or not to support your own perspective. The reality is we've all listened to the students. There's a very big difference between listening to what students have said and agreeing with what students have said. And I have absolutely listened to what the students have said, and I want to be really, really clear to JJ and the others, I disagree with what the students have said. I've also listened to what a lot of teachers have said. I've listened to what a lot of administrators who have said, who are also supportive of off and away all day. So no matter what we do here, we're going to be listening to everyone and agreeing with some people and disagreeing with others. It's the seven of us who it's our job to exercise our best judgment on what's going to move forward. And in my view, this is our best judgment on what we should do. And maybe we'll find out that it was wrong and we'll change that policy shortly thereafter. When it comes to the safety, another just sort of caution, I hear a lot of people say, oh, my kids need their phone for safety off campus. There absolutely are very rare, but not unheard of circumstances where something really dangerous happens where you wouldn't have a phone. Our students are far more likely to die as a pedestrian by looking at their phone than they are from any other safety issue out there. So if we really are talking about the safety of our students, taking away their phones when they're walking around off campus at lunch is going to save more lives than it's going to hurt. So let's just, again, we're talking about safety and risk, be really clear about that. And finally, the enforcement issue also bothers me a little bit. Oh my gosh, how are we going to enforce it? We enforce all kinds of our policies, both on and off campus. Policies around bullying, harassment, sexual assault, drug and alcohol use, use. We're not following kids around. We're not, sending the school, administrators after them. But we do have expectations of our students both on and off campus for a lot of our policies. So this is not any different than that. I don't expect enforcement would be any different than that. I don't expect that we're going to be, policing our students rigorously, on and off campus. I do think, as with all these other policies, to the extent things come to our attention, we're going to follow up on it. So with that, I'm going to support this, and I guess I'll turn it over to JJ.
Well, it's been great having this discussion for the past 6 months. I'm really grateful for all of my board members, especially Julia, who's the chair of the policy committee. I think it's really important that we center our student voice in every conversation we have here at the district level. I think we heard very clearly from our amazing student speakers who took the time out of their day to speak how they felt very concerned. They felt the safety and the concerns they had was extremely valid. I think we see at so many of our schools who don't have, safe neighborhoods, they see lots of things, gun violence, individuals overdosing, where sometimes they need to call authority or a trusted adult. I believe it's important we not only we listen, but we listen to understand when our students speak. Over the course of this time, as we've been kind of developing this policy, I've been hearing from students how they feel very unsafe. Their mental health has been declining. Lots of suicidal thoughts have been coming onto students, especially when we've been having this discussion, which I think it's really important to recognize that. And as a board and as we are in service of our students, so I think it's important that in our action, we are always and continue to be in service to our students. And that's why I'll be voting no on this policy. I know as a student representative to this board, under Oregon law, I don't have an actual vote and it won't impact this decision. But I truly ask my colleagues who I know truly center and care about students to lead with an equity and an empathy mindset, because it's what our students need. And I truly believe that we can be able to make our students feel safe. And I really hope that we vote no on this policy.
I just want to say a couple of things. I've said this before, but there's a spectrum of engagement. I think sometimes where we go wrong is we don't say, hey, we're just informing you of this thing. In this case, with the student survey and working with staff to put that out and really hear from students is really important work. And we didn't get back and say along the spectrum of engagement, which is from inform to consult, involve, collaborate, and finally to empower. We were kind of more on the consult side of this engagement, and the promise to the public when say that is we will keep you informed, listen, acknowledge your concerns, and let you know how your feedback is being used or not. And so we kind of failed to say we're going to listen, and when at the end of the day, when you get up here, you have to use your best judgment. I've made my decision the way I am because I care about our students. I want to see outcomes improve. I want to see our kids actually learning in class and not watching movies. That's not every student. That's some students, including family members, that are listening to music or watching movies or doing anything besides listening to their instructor. And that bothers me, and that ultimately drives my decision.
No, I'm just for the vote.
I want to vote. You ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You ready to vote? Let's do this. All right, the board will now vote on Resolution 7029, resolution to adopt student use of personal electronic devices in schools. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no.
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 Any abstentions? Student Representative Consavi, indicate your vote.
No.
I lost count.
That's
5-4. 5-2.
Thank you.
against.
All right, Resolution 7029 is approved by a vote of 5-2, with Student Representative Consavi unofficially voting no. Now we can all go to sleep tonight, right?
So let's not go there, because there's a YouTube video where the guy takes an expo marker, he puts the expo marker on the tip of the rim here, and he presses down real hard and it pops off. There's also a YouTube video of him putting it on the corner of a thing and pressing down and it breaking. So let's not go there and that I couldn't get it off. I'm just trying to be respectful and not show kids how to do it. But you can look on YouTube for yourself.
They're not using YouTube anymore.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. I was on my phone.
Thanks, Director Green.
Don't put me out there. You put
All
me
right.
out there. I go all the way.
Next up, we
Well,
have
hold
the
on.
next hot topic. Hey, let's get moving.
Hold on, I just want to say, they left. I wish they wouldn't have left. So there is a measure that has been potentially in front of the legislator as far as 16-year-olds being allowed to vote in school board elections. So I just wanted to let them know that once they be able to get a voice in voting, then that could be a voice they use for decisions that they didn't want to have for them moving forward.
I'd like to change my vote. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. Sorry.
Could have waited till Student Representative Katsika was back.
I was trying to do it before they left, but they already got up and left.
They hot.
This is democracy. I want to let them know that they have an opportunity later.
All right, our next item tonight is to vote on a resolution to refer a general obligation bond for the upcoming May special election. Director Scott, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair Wong. And if I'm a little distracted, it's because I just got a text that my daughter's locked out. So anyway, we're gonna do this, and then we'll figure out what needs to happen.
Well, glad she ain't at a school.
I cannot believe I walked right into that. Well, if she were at school, she wouldn't be locked out, would she? All right. Let's dive into this bond package. I just want to, I want to take a moment, and actually a few moments. I'm going to take a few minutes here, just to reflect on the importance of this bond package that we're voting on this evening. If the voters pass this bond, and I certainly hope they do, it means that PPS is going to finalize a promise that we made to voters more than a decade ago, that all of our PPS high schools will be modernized to be the learning spaces our students deserve, providing all of our students the chance to attend school at least once during their tenure within PPS in a new building. It's a huge accomplishment for the district, and I think it's something to be really celebrated. We started planning for this a year ago. We had a board work session in January of 2024. It was taken up by the Facilities and Operations Committee, chaired by Director Hollins, at each of the monthly committee meetings between February and June. I know we took a break in summer. We resumed these conversations in October, and with us meeting to discuss the bond package 5 times since October, both in the School Facilities Improvement Committee meetings and one board meeting and one work session. We've arrived tonight at what I believe is a very strong bond package that's going to effectively address some of the district's biggest issues. It is a large bond at $1.8 billion. However, it can also be done and passed without raising property taxes above their current rate, which our polling has shown is a really important factor for taxpayers in our district. In addition to finalizing all of our high schools, this bond package also makes a vital investment of almost $270 million for deferred maintenance, facility improvements, and athletic improvements in the district. These are the changes that our parents, students, teachers have been demanding. The bond package also invests over $240 million in new technology and curriculum, and I think it plans for a very reasonable 5% for administration and 5% for contingency. We had an earlier session for some of you who were here at between 5 and 6 to hear testimony on the bond. And I do want to respond to a little bit of that testimony we heard during that listening session. And I want to thank members of both the Cleveland and Ida B. Wells communities for being here tonight to strongly advocate for their schools. And I want to reiterate that the budget for the high school modernizations has not been reduced. So again, the budget of $1.15 billion has not decreased, and it is fully available if needed for those schools. What the board and the district administration is doing is we're asking those communities to look hard at the draft designs that they've been put together over the last year and a half, designs that were put together without a budget cap, I think it's worth adding, to figure out ways to be as fiscally responsible as possible with taxpayer dollars. There were a couple people earlier who testified who said that Lincoln High School, if it was built today, would cost $450 million. I think we need to be very clear that that is simply not true. Lincoln was built for $225 million, and it was completed in 2022. Construction inflation in 2022 was 12%. In 2023, it was 5%. We don't have figures for 2024 and beyond yet, but even if we assumed a very high inflation number of 8%, and I deal with construction inflation in my other job, it is not 8%, but if we assume 8% in 2024, 25, 26, and 27, when these buildings will be built, That $225 million is equal to $360 million. That is the amount we're asking the Cleveland and IDB Wells communities to target. The reason I want to be really clear about these facts is because PPS is not asking these communities, which include both my own alma mater at Wilson/IDB Wells and my daughter's high school currently, to accept something less than what others in the district have gotten. We are asking them to plan for the same amount as other high schools have been built for. And if the case is successfully made that those schools need to cost 25% more than Lincoln and other schools in the district, that money is still available in the bond we're proposing, which is why I think it's actually the package that the superintendent and staff brought forward really manages to walk that line of being fiscally responsible and also saying if we need it, the money's there. I'm going to summarize by highlighting that this bond package continues the long-term capital investment planning that started over 10 years ago, before any of us were on this board, to reverse the decades-long disinvestment in our buildings and facilities. I want to strongly amplify what PAT President Bonilla said, which is that this bond would not be necessary if the state was fully funding education in Oregon. However, we know that's not the case, and I'm grateful that the Portland community has and hopefully will continue to strongly support PPS bonds and improve the educational environment for our children. Turn it back to you, Chair Wong, or to staff.
Thank you. All right. Superintendent Armstrong, I don't know if you want to go first or do you want to put it on table first before?
I will pivot to staff and have them welcoming our Chief Operating Officer, Dan Jung, and our Chief of Staff, Deborah Kafori.
Thank you. Good evening. Unlike, I think, as Director Scott, we've had a number of meetings over the last year. We don't have a presentation tonight. I think it's the first time. We're just here to answer questions. And I think Director Scott did a great introduction, so I don't think our Chief of Staff has anything. So we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I guess this isn't a question. It's just I want to be sure that Director Scott is right, that we will be sure the Wells and the Cleveland high schools are what they expect.
It's a great question. I think Director Scott did a great job of explaining that the budget that is in the proposed bond is an amount to cover the budgets that were already established through the comprehensive planning process for all three of those schools. So if those funds are needed, those funds are available. If we are able to realize some savings through this current process that we're taking a look at the designs, then there can be savings that could be applied to other school modernization efforts. So yes is the answer.
And I think that's significant because some of the things that we've heard over the last month are, like, for instance, a school not getting a band room, or a theater being reduced in size, or a couple of classrooms being reduced. And that's not the intent. I think Director Scott explained it well. It gives us an opportunity to look at, other items that we've costed out. And also, I think just making sure we bold the golden line, which is it was a proposed amount, and that the schools, the actual complete design, haven't been costed out. So until we have an actual final design and then take that to be costed out, we don't know the dollar amount. So we're with proposed dollars at this point too. So I just wanted to kind of bold and underscore that.
And I would like to add one thing, which is that final decisions will come before this board. So the staff will not be making these decisions, the community will not be making these decisions in a vacuum. You all will have an opportunity to vote on the final designs for these schools.
I'm going to have some comments on some other areas and some other questions, but while we're on this riff, and I want to talk just a little bit about timing, because I feel there's a great deal of uncertainty that's been created, and I feel like I know there's a lot of energy in this community to have all of our high schools modernized, and over the years everybody's voted for the high schools in everybody else's neighborhoods so that everybody would get them. So I know there's a lot of energy, but I'm also concerned about the uncertainty, because I feel like we're heading into the referral without, like, our most fervent advocates ready to lead the charge. And part of it, and I'm hoping maybe we can sort of allay people's fears by having like a better understanding the timeline. So initially when the new targets, I think it's very helpful to know that the money's there if it's needed. But when the initial targets that were lower were shared, there was also going to be a cost study that was going to come back. That was going to come back at the end of November, and we still don't have that. So talk about, and then I think the other thing that is causing concern is if you're on a design advisory group, essentially those meetings have stopped. And so the sense of, we've got this momentum, everybody was told in 2020, like each school's gonna get $20 million, you're gonna do the design, you're gonna be shovel ready for 2024. That was when we were gonna go last year, but we're gonna be shovel ready when we get the next bond. And it seems like things are stopped. So to getting to this, it's gonna come back to the board. Is that gonna come back to the board like next month? 'Cause I would hope we have clarity of what we're asked, what the voters to know what it is, the project design that we're funding, because it hasn't been entirely clear. Like,
It's a great question, and so the three projects, so it's going to be, we expect this to be a little bit iterative. So what we have asked is the three project teams to go and look at some opportunities to reduce costs and then bring those back. And these are large, complicated projects, so they're looking at things that takes time to look at what those redesigns could be and to also do third-party professional cost estimates of what those are. So what we plan on doing here within the next couple of weeks is bring back that first iteration to leadership here, not necessarily to the board, but so for those teams to present and say, here's where we think we're going. Are we headed down the right path? And we as leadership will say, yes, we think that's right, or if we need to make some corrections, allow them time to refine that, and then we will bring that to the board or to a committee or whichever way that is, say, is this the right direction that we're going? We don't want to get too far down the line if this isn't something that's ultimately palatable for the board. So we want to bring back some initial thinking, get some direction if we're headed in the right direction, and then we would continue to refine that. If the decision is, or the feedback is at that time that is, those reductions are not something that is palatable to the board, then we will change course from there. But we're hoping over the next weeks and months to bring this to some sort of clarity as far as where these projects are headed in their design.
but before the voters vote on it?
That would be ideal. It's hard to know exactly how long, because we do think this will be a little bit iterative, but that would certainly be what we prefer.
Okay. I think the other place, and I appreciate, so we have a base set of ed specs from 2017, and I appreciate, I can't remember if it was Superintendent Armstrong or Chief of Staff Kfouri who said, you're gonna have all the bells and whistles everybody else has, which to me that's like, okay, that's the ed specs plus. And I think if people felt that was like, we've got that commitment, so they're going to try their best to reduce costs, because we're all taxpayers, and that's a good thing if we can reduce costs that don't impact actually academic programming. But I think there's this concern that it is going to impact some, like the extra CTE space that Ida B. Wells uses, or the amazing choir and band programs that Cleveland has, or their athletic fields, or that's going to be somehow compromised. So I don't know, can you provide assurance, like, is the bells and whistles the basic ed specs, like what everybody else got?
Well, that's what's tough about that is until the committee is in space designing and we see, I think what our chief operating officer shared last time is that all of the schools have things that are above and beyond ed specs, while others may have chose something else. But I think what would be helpful, I mean, of course, respond, but I think would be helpful is to share a couple of things that have represented the team going back and looking at some cost-saving line items.
Yeah, so we've asked the teams to look at as the superintendent notes, all of our projects have some areas where they exceed the ed specs and others where they don't exceed ed specs for a number of reasons. There could be special programs in schools, or there could be site constraints, which Lincoln, for example, has site constraints around athletics. And so there's always those puts and takes. What we've asked the teams to go is look back on the designs and say, are there opportunities to where things are above ed specs where we might be able to bring those down? And also, are there areas where we are designing above the code requirements? So something that is above and beyond what's required for a new building, and see, does that save us material costs? So those are two areas that the teams are currently looking at. We haven't seen what the results of those are yet.
Okay, so I'm for the bond. I'm all for the bond. You did a great talk, Andrew. Thank you. To Scott, Rita, and Edith, it's so good to see. It's like we're having a reunion. So I just wanted to make sure I said that publicly. That I love seeing y'all here. But getting back to where I was going with this, I'm all for the bond. I'm getting concerned that what I had originally asked for is being misconstrued somehow. And that we're losing sight of what I thought the goalpost was. And so I want to try to be as clear as I possibly can in each iteration to make sure that I specify the same goalpost so that it doesn't seem like it's moving. I believe what I was asking for at the time when I was trying to bring this up was a construction audit. I literally framed it as such. I would like to get a construction audit so that I can see so that we can understand, not just myself, so that we can understand how much we're spending and why it's necessary to spend what we're spending, because the numbers that we were producing seemed elevated when you started looking around the city or around the state. When you looked at the Beaverton, was it Beaverton that was building a school that was same as us, large, it was beautiful, and they did it for $269, and yet we had specs that said we were going to be doing close to $400+ million. So the question that I was bringing to the table was not ever to reduce the cost or to value engineer Cleveland or IDB Wells, but to really get an in-depth understanding of why we were spending the money that we were spending on this side of the water when less than 10 miles away someone else was spending substantially less. I was informed that we would get an audit of some kind at the end of November. And at the end of November, we would get an audit that would show this is why we're spending it. Because I am one to say every single time, if it takes this, if this is what it takes to get it done, like Andrew said, we've got the money there, let's spend it. I don't want to cut a theater. I don't want to cut band. I don't want to cut choir. I don't want to cut any of those. My question is not, do we have the money? My question is, can we justify why we're spending, how much we're spending on our buildings? So are you telling me that when you guys are saying we're looking for opportunities to reduce cost, is that our language for we're doing an audit? So we're auditing ourselves? And if that's the language for we're looking for opportunities to where we can reduce costs, shouldn't there be some sort of who's making sure that our numbers are right? Who's making sure that, we're not, I'm just not looking at Andrew. I'm going to just not look over there because I don't want to deal with why I'm spending that $20 million. And so we're just going to focus. An audit to me means that it's someone taking a subjective, objective look where they don't really care. They just here to tell you the raw facts. This is what it is. And then they come back and then we say, dang, it really cost us this much. Or they come back and they say, what the heck? Why have we been spending so much? So when I'm looking for an audit, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone to hold me accountable so that I can go back to the voters and the public and the guy that I'm running to at Fred Meyer, and they say, why are you spending so much money on schools? I can pull up my audit that shows that this cost has gone up and that this has gone up. And I remember when plywood was $180 a sheet, the same sheet that cost $40. So I remember these different costs going up, but they've come down substantially. I just want to make sure that what we're asking for and what we're saying we need is what we actually need, and not just some number that somebody else has made up. So the design, I thought the design was supposed to drive the conversation. And so if the design itself is driving the conversation, the architect, they come in, they say, this is what we're going to get and this is what we're going to do. Then they take it to a project manager, and the project manager then looks at it, says it's actually buildable, it's something that we can actually do. And then, but we're just saying we've got $400 million for a building. Now go do something with it. That seems like backwards. So we need to, in my humble opinion, again, I'm not an expert here. I preach. And so other people can do that part. That's why I'm asking for an audit. So then I don't have to make this stuff up. I don't have to speculate, because the audit and the people that run the audit, they will do all that for me. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. When are we going to get that? That's what I need. I need to know when we're going to get that. When is the audit coming back, so that we can say with certainty that this is why we're doing what we're doing. And it is what it is.
It's the
Thank you. We should probably put this on the table first.
Okay.
Yeah, let's
So moved.
Second.
Third.
I guess I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 7038, Resolution of Portland Public Schools, Multnomah County School District 1J, Multnomah County, Oregon, calling a measure election to submit to electors of the district the question of authorizing $1.83 billion of general obligation bond and providing for related matters. Director, I think Scott moved, and Director Hollins?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, who seconded?
I was third. I know I was. I said third.
I said it.
Shall we
that's fine.
arm wrestle?
No, I'm good.
All right.
You gotta get Ailey.
You know it's getting late when we're all being delirious. Is there any board? Would you like to continue discussion?
So I'm going to have an amendment to put on the table as well. Do you want me to do that now?
Now?
I can, or we can have a general discussion.
Well, let's ask. Does anybody else have any general discussion questions?
So I have some other questions, and I just want to go. So I think what I heard you say is we might not know what the design is until after the election. I heard that it will come back to the board, but the design may not come back until after the election.
So it might be worthwhile doing just a quick bit of like framing and maybe answer some questions about where designs and cost estimates come from. I'll do like super quick. So for all of our modernizations, they start with these foundational documents. The ed specs are the one that are most known, but we have design guidelines and those things. And what these documents are informed by staff, they're informed by stakeholders, they're informed by different community members, and so those are the foundation. When we move into our next phase, which is planning, that's when we bring on board our design teams and third-party cost estimators. And so what they do is they combine these foundational documents, they combine the existing conditions of the school, the unique programs of the school, and they engage the stakeholders, including like their design advisory groups. And what they produce is one comprehensive plan, so a very, very early design, and that is informed by a third-party professional construction cost estimator. So that's the basis. There's other costs, but that's the bulk, that's the basis for where our cost estimates come from. And those comprehensive plans are then approved by the board to include the scope, the schedule, and the budget. And that's when we also show where we compare what the ed specs are versus what's in the comprehensive plan. So there's kind of like an accounting of where those puts and takes are. So that's the basis. After the comprehensive plan is approved, which they've been approved for the 3 modernization schools, we move into the formal design phases. And there's 3 of those, and each along the way, we get updated professional cost estimates. And again, that's what the budgets of the schools are based on. All the 3 schools were in schematic design. One may have just finished schematic design. When we put them on pause and then asked them to go and say, take a look at what some potential cost saving options are. Depending on the outcome of that will depend on really that process, where we are in the design and where if we need to go back or if we can proceed forward. So I understand your question is, when do I get that design? We will have at least a high level before the May vote for sure. I just don't know exactly where it will be because it'll depend on what that information is and what the decisions are between now and then.
And can I just also, that's normal for our process, right? Like we're further ahead on Wells and Cleveland than we have been with any other high school modernization. Right. Normally when we go out for high school modernization.
At the time of referral.
At the time of referral.
Yes. So typically we are in the planning phase. We're not in the design phases. So yes, correct.
That's right.
But we actually last time said, because you're last in the process and we know you didn't get to go the 2020 bond, that we're going to give you money.
Funded.
So you're further along in the process.
Because it's funded.
When the referral comes, right?
Right.
which was an explicit promise. I'm also just looking at the bond accountability committee, who looked at the package, and they said, like, the committee agrees with staff that there may be ways to reduce the cost for these schools. However, at this time, we have no information that would show the cost could be reduced to the lower targeted numbers. Therefore, our recommendations can only be made on the data we have for the scopes of work we've reviewed. So it sounds like they're like, we don't see where the cost reductions or some cost reduction could be made, but not the pretty dramatic.
What they're acknowledging, I don't want to speak for the committee, but I think what they're acknowledging there is the process that these projects have been through. So they all have approved comprehensive plans that have cost estimates. They've been through the design phases, have updated cost estimates. They've brought on general contractors to help support those. So we have competing estimates so we can compare the two to make sure that we're accurate. And they know that we're going through this process to look for reductions. They don't know the outcome of that yet. So what they're just acknowledging is, we understand that you're going through this process for reductions. We don't know what those are going to be. Therefore, that's the genesis of the note.
Yeah, I just watched that today. It sounded like they were saying, you have this amount of money that you can use on those two buildings. And they wouldn't say more than that, because that's all they knew, right?
Yeah, we presented the budgets and the funding between the two bonds for Cleveland, Jefferson, and Wells, and then acknowledged that, between the 2020 bond and the proposed bond, the total funding is over $1.5 billion. What we're targeting is to bring that in under that amount, and they understand where we are in the process.
So are we getting the bells and whistles? The similar schools? It's just a question that we're going to be asked. I mean, are Cleveland and Ida B. Wells going to get similar schools? I heard all the caveats, but just a general acknowledgement that they're going to get modernized schools that have similar, maybe slightly different depending on their programming, but similar features.
They are going to be amazing high schools. They are going to be blow your mind, cool high schools. And as a parent of 3 who went through Cleveland, I will be up there demanding, just as all the good folks who are in green and gold, that those schools are amazing. And it is our belief that we can have those schools for a cost that the taxpayers can feel comfortable about paying. We've seen it all over the country, and we're going to see it here in Portland, Oregon.
So amazing is similar. Because I've been a parent.
Bells and
Cleveland
whistles. Yes, Cleveland, yes.
Sorry,
Okay, so
I
love Cleveland,
another
but
question
it's a
about
terrible
Cleveland
school.
that came up because when the documents got consolidated, the acknowledgement about the athletics as being part of the scope of the, so we very specifically have funding in the bond for many of the other high schools for projects that didn't happen when their modernizations happened, which need to happen. But on that list, Cleveland's not on there, either is Ida B. Wells. And Dan, can you share where that assurance is that Cleveland athletics is in the scope?
Yeah, in previous versions and meetings, we enumerated the modernizations, and we had a separate line for Cleveland athletics. I'll call it off-site athletics. It had sort of different names. And the backstory of why that had a separate line was a little bit because when that comprehensive plan was approved for Cleveland, there was the note to make sure to include that. So we just held it separately because it had a different budget. I think there was just some confusion at the last meeting on December 17th. I think staff took some feedback and thought that was confusing to have two lines, and so the intent was to consolidate so that the Cleveland modernization does include the off-site athletics, the baseball, softball, the multi-purpose fields as well. The team is continuing to look at options for what the best location is for that because it can't fit on the site proper. So that is what will be brought back to the board when we relook at the Cleveland comprehensive plan.
Is it in any of the documents that, like the written documents? Because that's what guide the...
I don't think that's enumerated in the materials here, but they can be.
I think it would be good to have it included because most of us aren't going to be here in 8 years. Okay, well, there you go.
Be here in general.
Those new stipends. I mean, I think
Some
it's
of us
important
will
to
be here
enumerate it
tomorrow.
because it just all of a sudden disappeared. And when there's other uncertainty, it's like, I think we should be clear in writing, because what I've been told is like, if it's not in writing, it actually is not a commitment to the district.
Fair enough. We thought we were making it simpler, and I think we made it more confusing. That wasn't our goal.
Okay. I want to just comment briefly on the,
Can we get very brief? I want to move.
Okay.
We're kind of behind on time right now.
okay, why don't you go, and I'll offer my amendment after people have a chance to.
No, I'm not going. I'm just asking. You had a brief comment? Just
No, go ahead. That's fine. I'll just do it in my summary comments.
Great. Do you have an amendment to propose?
Oh, you want me to do it now? Okay. Okay. I'm moving that we amend the resolution that's on the table to add $40 million to the 2025 bond, increasing the total bond amount to fund investments in the planning for and creation of a Center for Native American Student Excellence, and to direct staff to amend the proposed ballot title and explanatory statement affect that amendment. That is the motion.
You have to have a motion.
So just to explain that the reason why there's a direction to staff to amend the proposed ballot versus providing specific language, because it's not a good idea to be amending ballot title language at the board table. So this gives the staff gives staff the flexibility to add it. I'm going to speak to the amendment. I'm also going to ask that, because we're voting on it, that public comment be allowed on it, because that's what we generally do when we have a vote on an action item. So I would ask if people want to comment on the amendment, that they be allowed to. I brought this forward in February of 2024, following a discussion we had about the AVT resolution. In fact, the resolution was in our documents tonight to provide support for the action the district was taking to do something to repair harm that had happened to the Black community. And in that, the original draft of the resolution excluded mention of the Native community, who was actually here first. And so we did the right thing, which we amended it. And Director DePass said at the time, we need to do more than just say things that we're going to make things better, that we care about Native students, doing land acknowledgements, asking the drumming circle to come to every one of our new school openings. And so from that, the Indian Parent Committee brought forward with a proposal, and I shared that with everybody on the board in February of last year. And at every meeting, and I have the whole documentation, because there was some question about, like, this was new. It's like it actually was raised. It was posted with the documents. It was commented on at the February, March, April, May, and June meeting. Then there was a hiatus over the summer, and when we came back, it got raised again. And then the December 2nd meeting, there was a whole host of suggestions of, like, actually, we really think we know what the Native community wants, or we should ask them to create something else and to show they have support. And they came back with a proposal, but it's not new. And I think we heard, there's been a lot of conversation about, we know what they really want is X, or they really want is Y. And I think we should be respectful and actually let them share what they think is the best way to support their students. And, you know, I appreciate the data tonight that there's almost 2,000 Native students. We don't have a strategy. There isn't a place, and I think we've taken lots of steps which one of the things I'm most proud of on the board, that we've taken many steps to address the harm that happened to the Black community and Black students and Black families. And I think we should be also taking steps to address harm that's happened for almost 2 centuries to Native students and PPS. And to me, and I appreciate, again, Director DePass really sort of giving me the kick of like, hey, let's just stop talking about it, or amending resolutions to say something that about like what we feel and we really want to do better. And so putting something in the bond is a way in which we can respect what the Indian Parent Committee asked for. In addition, I think it's important to also recognize that we shouldn't necessarily be comparing 2 projects that impact 2 communities that have been harmed. That to say, well, this is what this community got, or this is what they need, and so we're going to give you we're telling you we need the same. And I think, this is a great case of representation matters, because there's no Native who's been a member of this board, and so
There has been.
yes, right.
Matt Morton.
One. But the representation, the representation at the table matters.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think when we talk about representation, when Matt Morton was on the board, that was one of his reasons the contract with NAIA happened, for the same reason you're bringing up now for the Native American and for excellence. I'm just going by what I was told, so don't kill the messenger. And so while we're talking about America has harmed a lot of groups, and I don't think we need to play oppression Olympics up here with one group versus another group versus Asians that got sent to concentration camps in Vanport. I get that, right? We can sit here and play oppression Olympics all day long. My question and I don't have a problem with doing the Native American Center for Excellence either. My question is, one, are we adding to the original bond, or are we taking the money from somewhere else previously on the bond already? That would be one. 2, my question would be, since we're talking about facilities, are we going to underfund? Because we're talking about $40 million to build something. Is that enough money? And where's that data to show that we can actually use $40 million to build something that they're going to need? Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to underfund something either. We don't want to be back in 2017 where we're trying to just throw a number in there without really understanding what is it going to need for them to get what they need. If we say, okay, $40 million, and then 2 years from now it's $60 million, then what happens, right? And so those are some of the questions that I would have. But I want to get out of playing that oppression Olympic stuff, because America has harmed a whole lot of people. And so if we're going to try to make it right by everyone that America has harmed, we need to do a lot more. We need to add way more to this bond than what we have on the table.
Well, I think we have made progress since my tenure on the board, and the investments we've made, and I hope we continue to make them. But that's not to me, it's not a reason not to do it. And to answer your question, the way the amendment is drafted, it's an add. There was an earlier conversation that if you wanted to add something, you had to subtract something. But I will note, in February, this was on the table, along with everything else, and no other project, whether it was my beloved athletics project or your Roosevelt grandstands, none of those projects, anything in here, had to cut something in order to be in the project. So,
we actually cut a lot of stuff from the original amount that we was going to do. When we first started talking about, we started talking about almost having $700 million in deferred maintenance. We did cut that. So there was cuts when we first originally talked about a bond. It was almost $3 billion. So yes, we did cut a whole lot of stuff when we came back after break. So we're talking about what we really need for all of our students. If we're going to increase, I'm all for increasing. I've been for increasing and making sure we have what we need for all of our students. I'm all for it. The problem is I don't want to put them in a position that we're saying $40 million is going to get what you need. One, that's just the building. We're not talking about no programming. We're not talking about tutoring. We're not talking about the stuff that they stood up here and talked about as far as the educational stuff that they need. Where is that coming from? We can give them a building, and then what happens? If we're not talking about all the way around, so when we look at, and when you say compare things, when we compare like the Center for Black Excellence, they had a whole wraparound program that they had attached to it. Now, whether the building portion is done or not, they had a whole wraparound portion attached to that. I don't see that with just $40 million, and we're going to just build them a small building somewhere for $40 million. Where's the whole wraparound service that they're needing, like the other one? So I have to compare, because those are the only two things that I have.
Well, their proposal didn't have building a new building. That wasn't in the proposal they made.
So what's the $40 million for?
We have a federal obligation to educate Native students, and hopefully much better than we do.
Well, we have a humanitarian to educate all of our kids. So it's not that their kids don't get, all of our kids got to be educated. It's not just their black kids got to be educated. Hispanic kids have to be educated. White kids have to be educated. Asian kids have to be educated. So the separation stuff is I don't know if it's just eating at me today or any other time, but we can't start separating. Well, we have to do something extra for this or something extra for that or something extra for them. If we are talking about doing something, and I'm all for doing something, I don't want to half-ass do something. I don't want to just say, well, here's $40 million, but we have nothing else to go with that. We have no programming. We have no anything that we need to put with that, because we have buildings right now and our kids are not getting educated. We have buildings right now and our kids are not reading. We have buildings right now and our kids are underperforming. So just to have a building is one thing. I want to make sure that we have things that's going to actually teach them. And I just need to know what in that proposal is going to actually teach the kids, not just provide a building.
I think that's great. And to build on what I was looking at with this was actually what I heard Dr. Armstrong speaking to earlier. So when she spoke, she was speaking to that she had received a letter, and in the letter they had asked for some specific things. They wanted to see specific things, and that, making sure that they had a space or making sure that they had these pieces. That was and as I heard, and maybe we can expand on that a little bit. As I heard, it sounded like you addressed every one of the line items, or every one of the line items was addressed, as far as like programming, education, making sure that. And so what I would be hoping is that what you're asking for would possibly be in addition to the programming or whatever it is that Dr. Armstrong has already said that we're going to be doing. And then I would be looking to see if it's about a space. Do we already have a space that, instead of dumping $40 million into a new building, do we have an existing building that's maybe being underutilized, that we can say, hey, this is what we're going to do as far as like the programming, the other stuff we're spending. I think I heard you say $1.1 million as far as curriculum. We're working with the tribal units the tribal nations, because I believe it's important to recognize that these are like governing nations, that this is not just like a unit of people. These are like governing nations. And so we're working with all the different governing nations to come together to say, okay, does this actually do? And if not, what should we be doing? Because anything that we do for you without you, we're actually doing to you. And so now we bring all that information together. This is the list that you've given me. These are the things that you said you want me to make sure that I've done. Did I hit the mark? Are we where we need to be? I think if we have an inclusive conversation, then I believe that we're winning. If it's in addition to, I believe that we're winning. I think I've always said, I'm for more. Like, I believe we're doing ourselves a disservice by having a scarcity. I believe it's a scarcity mindset of saying that if we add any more, people are going to say no. I just don't believe it. I believe that, I do believe there's a line. There is a line. And I just don't believe that we've gotten, if we're doing what's right for our kids, making sure that they're going to have the access to education that we know that they need, making sure that they're going to get the opportunities that we know that they deserve, that we're positioning them to be the leaders for tomorrow, that when it comes down to it, that we make the sacrifice today for tomorrow. And I believe that's what I heard you say that you're doing. And I believe that this would just be in addition to, I would hope. And so I'd like to hear you.
Yeah, I want to respond. Thank you. I appreciate that. I was thinking about the public testimony when the student referenced my comment about a tribal liaison and saying, basically no disrespect, but that's not what we want. That's something that's not even able to be covered with bond funds. So most of the things that I listed was a response to the committee's requests or items that aren't even able to be covered with bond funds, saying that we're ready to engage immediately within the next 6 months. We have not yet sat down. I had one meeting over winter break, but we have not sat down with community members, tribal leaders, families to begin to have conversation about, what might a job description look like. I know in the letter requested it was hiring 3 staff to do a engagement process for some of the requested items. And so we're prepared to meet one, knowing that we are still working through a $40 million deficit, and there are reductions to my staff that we will create to establish this position, because we know and we hear the call to action, and we do know that we need to do a better job. Also mentioning sites, regardless of where you all are at on the board with something that's erected or established now or in the future, I know that we could have centers and modernized buildings now, just like we have college and career centers in all of our high schools. I think it was my attempt of saying, we can be innovative. We can meet community in a place to envision what's possible. What stops us from having a native center like a career and college center in all of our modernized high schools? Right. So I think it was more that call of let's engage with community in here. And most of the things that I mentioned are things that would not be a part of the $40 million bond, because we know that the bond is the building only. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify and say that that it's a resource that we're in the 1,000 hours for tutoring or academic support. That's something that we're funding out of a budget that is in deficit. And it's not something that can be funded with bond dollars, just to be clear. But we also understand, like I said, the call to action and a move that we need to make to respond to our community, as outlined as one of the items in the letter.
Just a query, and I don't know if this is for Dan or for the superintendent, but the staff that you're talking about, anytime we have any sort of a capital project, there's usually somebody who's coordinating it or running the facilitations, right? I mean, that is paid for with bond funds.
Correct.
If it's a bond project.
Yeah, the bond funds can pay for staff that are directly attributable to that capital asset.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's typically more in the construction office. We wouldn't be able to hire 3 liaison folks to plan programming and support within that center. That would be an incorrect, as you know, that would be an incorrect use of bond funds. And so I think what's been clear to me as I've listened to some of the comments is that I don't know if there's a shared understanding from the people that I've heard from on what's possible with bond dollars. There also seems to be some thoughts that a center would be like a unifying place for students to be during the school day. And if it's a conversation about building a school, a native school, well, that's a whole different process, right? So I think it would be important for me and the team moving forward, which I'm hoping will become clear as we meet or through public testimony, what exactly the ask is for. Are we asking for a K-12 school for Native students? There's a different conversation than saying a center to be able to pull resources and support students during the day. Because if it's about supporting students during the day, then those centers ought to be in the schools where students are at. Otherwise, with students spread across all of our sites, I don't know how that works, and I'm open to hear and learn more. But it wasn't an option to say, like, because we have this, you don't need to consider anything else. It's saying that there's a call to action and there's work that we need to do and we need to engage in it immediately, and we're prepared to do that, and we're prepared to name resources that can begin to address. Because one thing I have to say, and I've been sitting with this for the last couple of days because I've heard from multiple members that if we don't do this, then we don't care about serving or supporting Native students, and I want to publicly dismiss and reject that. I don't know everyone's personal story and journey, but I know that I personally mentor Native students in Portland Public Schools and have done so ever since I've been a chief academic officer. So this whole concept of, well, if we don't do this, we must not that. Like, that's not the way that we move together in collaboration and in the spirit of doing what's right and best for our students. And so I appreciate the opportunity to publicly state that as well.
Director Scott?
Thanks. I think the conversation about how we improve Native student achievement is one of the most important conversations we should be having. We should be having in every meeting. And I think, the district's failed to do that. And we failed to do that for decades. We failed to do that on my watch over the last 6 years, and we should start. We should start figuring out. We talk about it as a board. We should start figuring out. How do we add student achievement for Native students, student achievement for Black students, student achievement for Latino students to every single meeting? I'm going to oppose the amendment because I don't think this is the right solution to that problem. A $40 million building, even if it has a positive impact on student achievement 5 years from now or 6 years from now when it's built, and I don't think that's a certainty, doesn't get at the heart of what I think Superintendent Armstrong has laid out today, which, due to the advocacy and people talking about it, is actually getting the conversation going about what can we do today, not what can we do in 5 or 6 years with a bond, but what can we do today. I also want to point out, because I think it's important, the concept of this was brought forward last year, but the proposal didn't come forward until December 17th. And the reason why that's important is because I think another real disservice was done to the Native community for whoever has been working with them over this last year to not make it really clear about what a bond can and can't fund, what the timelines and deadlines are. I mean, this is something that, again, conceptually, we got an email about from Director Brim Edwards a couple times this year, but a proposal came on December 17th, and that's too late to get into this process. And again, I don't know what was happening there, but it's too late to have the necessary staff input, the public review, the overall discussion, and the most important discussion about ultimate outcomes, because that's really what we're talking about, is what is going to move the needle on Native student achievement. And what's going to do that in the best way? And I don't believe this amendment will do that. I think some of the things the superintendent's laid out can do that, and I think this board can do a lot of that moving forward, but it's going to be more of a budget conversation than it is a bond conversation.
I just want to reread something that I read when Directors Holland and Green and Brim Edwards were sworn in 2021, and it's about the history of this district. And it says, for 170 years, PPS's failing pattern of response towards struggles of communities of color, especially Black and Native, stems from institutional and cultural racism that continues to exacerbate the inequities we see in society today. And in fact, the origin story of our district is one of a district that viewed Black and Native children as burdens to educate. And I just want to ground my statement in knowing that that is our history. And I go on to say that the faces and the tactics have changed and the outcomes have not. That said, I want to, Director Scott, I'm looking at you like, what is his name? On your last day. No, it isn't. That when I was looking at the proposal that we got in December And actually hearing for the first time what Superintendent has proposed, I've been thinking about, and I was a very strong advocate for a center until I started to think about it. And I'm thinking about what my hope is for the Native American and the Black communities, because we know those are the two communities that we're failing the most. I would like to see and have hope that we can institute practices that can work with our Native students. I think we have people in the room and in the community who know how to do this work, and I don't think it's a building. We can look back to the Center for Black Excellence and look at the outcomes from that project. It's early; it's been about 4 years, but that hasn't improved outcomes like we had intended 4 years ago at all. In fact, there's no shovel in the ground yet. Some of the things that came through the proposal, the individual and group tutoring and mentoring, the work on shared courses developed for Native students and portfolio projects, which I'm a big fan of, natural resource management, project-based learning, space for art classes. Those things happen in schools that we already have. I think I talked earlier about sustainable building, and the most sustainable option is to use the buildings that we have currently. A single building that will require transportation, because not every Native American student lives near a building, wherever that building would be. The community's dispersed. Transportation's always going to be an issue, and safety, and I would personally rather see our current buildings being used, built out even, programming added, and thank you for talking about your tribal liaison hire, the 1,000 hours of tutoring, and I didn't write down everything that you'd said. It was new to me the first time I'd heard it. I would be really in favor of that, because what I'd really like to see is outcomes before 4 years, starting as soon as possible. The computer lab, the intergenerational learning, the community service providers, wraparound providers, those are all things that are very much needed in communities of color, and those should be done with help of partners. We have a major Native American partner that would love to be involved in the conversation. We heard from the executive director of NAIA today. I know they don't serve everybody, trust me. They don't serve everybody, but they do want to be involved. They want to help. They want to partner. They want to share resources with us. And so I appreciate, Superintendent, your quick and responsive, your proposal. And I would be supportive of doing that if we can do it quickly, if we can, to Director Scott's point, talk about this at every meeting. We should be talking about Native American and Black student outcomes at every meeting. And I'll conclude there. Thank you.
Done. Let's do it.
I'd like to ask for people if they would like to provide public comment on the amendment.
All right. Yeah, let's move to public comment. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have people sign up for public comment?
This wouldn't.
But it's an action item,
No, I'm
which
saying
is
it wouldn't have been something that people had already signed up for. So if we're going to open up the floor, maybe we need to say we're going to open up the floor for X number. Sorry, my mic isn't on. Because it's a new item, the amendment is new, right? But yet we're going to vote on it. So because of that, I think we need to identify we're a set number of people that can come up, and then see if we have people in the audience that would want to come up and actually speak to it. Because we are voting on it, but I don't know that we had somebody already previously signed up that would have been cleared to get approved, is what I'm trying to speak to.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, well, I guess let's see is there anyone here who are able to and would like to provide public comment?
Say it with excitement. Is there anybody here that would, after hearing what we've just talked about, would like to come down and share a few words? You're the next contestant on the Speak Your Mind.
So we got two. No? Thank you.
My name is Lucas Hunter. I'm affiliate of the Yakima Nation, and I'm a Portland kid, born and raised. I'm born and raised here in Portland and have been fortunate enough to have been exposed to and experience some amazing things in life and in our community. We have a beautiful community, but it's changed a lot. I'm 31 years old. I grew up in Northeast Portland when it was Northeast Portland prior to gentrification.
Yeah, we know about that.
Being that I am biracial and living in two worlds is typically the easiest comparison for the youth that we work and experience with. I had my own struggles of trying to find identity and also just to find my place in my own community. I was fortunate enough to find that through sports, through athletics, working within community, and those things were fostered for me. I'm now about 5 to 6 years into working in the community. I've previously worked in gang prevention and youth advocacy and in case management, specifically in our indigenous community. And I appreciate all your points about, it should be collaborative. I'm not fully against that. However, the couple of organizations that I can think of that do a lot of the work, it's not enough. It's not. We do need additions. I'm going to try and hold off from speaking on a lot of the amazing points that have already been made historically and that sort of thing. However, we deserve to heal, and our communities deserve to heal. This is a big part of healing for us. Yes, we are spread out. We're also understaffed, which makes it extremely difficult to get to all the community that we work with. A center for us would create that center per se, and that community for us to pour into the youth that we work with and their families. I just want to leave off with something that's near and dear to me, and it's a vision and prophecy by Chief Crazy Horse, who's an Oglala Lakota chief and leader, and his prophecy was that of the 7th generation, typically 150 years per se. It's been 7 generations, and when we make decisions that we make today, we should consider 7 generations to come. We're still affected by the decisions that were made 7 generations ago, but I myself am a part of that 7th generation. My sister is here, our children are, and the youth that are in your schools are part of that 7th generation. And when speaking about this prophecy, it talks about a darkness that our people would go through, all people of color would go through for those 7 generations, but then we would all gather under a tree of life. And I believe that this center is a tangible representation of what that tree of life is.
Hello again, board. Thank you for hearing me once again as I spoke earlier about our tribal sovereignty. Well, I want to remind you all that I have worked at NAYA. I also advocated in 19 schools. I advocated right next to one of our chairs for DLI. I have my bachelor's in social work, and I'm a licensed social worker. I want to start by reminding you that this isn't an ask. This is a need for our mental health. We're all suffering. This isn't about who was here first. This is about who's here now. This isn't about what color we are. We're putting up barriers and walls against each other as we're sitting here visiting on what we need to help our youth. Now let me remind you, I've been in 19 schools. I seen where we were suffering. I sat by people who wanted to strike. I visited with people. It's not just our admin who need help at this point. But I want to remind you once again, tribal history is shared history. As we know, and as SB 13 requires all K-12 districts in Oregon to teach all students, to learn all Oregon's history, and to honor the sovereignty and the self-determination of Native people. The Native community put forth the proposal asking for the community to engage the process in our building for Native Center for Students Excellence, both programming and physically. What we heard at the beginning of the school board meeting was a list of items and the immediate decisions that were made without us. This repeat of centuries-old productive methods of communication. Our students and community members said it best earlier tonight. We are not asking for bigger contracts with outside the organizations or even a tribal liaison. We are asking for PPS to engage with our community and trust us with self-determinations of our needs. Why do you trust every other community to do so except the Native students and families? Again, we plead with you to show us that you see Native students by voting to include a center for Native students, for Native student success as a line item in the bond. Piecemeal solutions will not solve problems we identified. Community specialists will not teach the learning centers of our students. A person is not a building or a space. Work is already required by the state. Where would we gather as community? The capacity of the building, the entire district, is the key to the system and improvement of our community. Remind you, a tribal liaison is not what we need. We are our tribal liaison, and we've been showing you guys that for a long time. Pidamia, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Any further discussion? No, I think for the sake of time. All right.
I want to respond. I want to just
like to ask us to move to a vote on the amendment and the bond.
Okay, I'm gonna just.
Hold on. I just want to add. I want to thank the Indian parent community for speaking out and advocating. I think your voice has been heard. We are listening. There has, as a former educator in PPS, there has been quite a lot of work. And not all of it was successful, and I'll give it that. And one of the things that I also know is that, when we ask our teachers, if we ask our teachers, what do they need in terms of like how to help certain communities, and I'm willing to bet, because this is how I would answer, is that we would like more support, right? Support means people and time, and it's not necessarily support for a specific community, because any support means that as a teacher I now have more time that I can give to students who need it and more attention for students who need it. And I just want to really, really reiterate the advocacy that has come out has been great. And either way this goes, it is a call to action. And Superintendent Armstrong's proposal means that we can start this work right now. We can identify a space, a location. One of the advantages of doing Superintendent Armstrong's proposal, identify a current building with a space that can be open after hours, is that then that building will now have the ability to be staffed or be open, right, versus a separate building. And there's limitations in terms of staffing, what bonds can pay for, and the risk of that not being able to be staffed. So there's an advantage, a very strong advantage in terms of what I see in Dr. Armstrong's proposal and moving forward, in that, A, we can start this work now. Number two, we do need to center our Native American community more often, and we should be revisiting every board. So, I, as chair, I am going to recommend at least, a quarterly formal check-in on what the progress is being done and things are going to be done in terms of addressing the issues surrounding our Native American communities. With that said, I just want to also just stress really quick, I'm very happy that this happened because, again, I reiterate one more time, what this means is we can start this work now. And I think that is more important than waiting 5 or 6 years. And so, yes, with that,
There's a call for a vote.
I'm going to call to a vote.
I'd like to say one last thing.
Try to
Just
do it
my
in a
closing,
minute.
my closing comments. Well, I wanted to just say, there was a suggestion that it wasn't brought before it. There was zero curiosity when I brought the proposal forward from staff. I had to repeatedly ask to have it posted online. That's the only reason why I got it posted, because I asked repeatedly, not because staff took any initiative. So I'll just say the whole blaming it on the community, they didn't bring anything forward, they didn't know what the process was. There was repeated requests to have discussion. We had people who came and provided public comment. So I just want to correct the record. We also did not bat an eye by adding $40 million several weeks ago for administration, which we needed. And I think we shouldn't have batted an eye with it. We needed to do it. But I don't think there's a reason why we shouldn't also add an increment of money. And I'll just say there also has been a discussion at this board table that if we don't do something now, we can go out for a bond in a couple years. We're not going out for a bond in a couple of years. We've all seen the polling, because if we went out for a bond in a couple of years, we'd have to raise taxes, and we know that wouldn't pass. So this is the opportunity right now, here and now, to invest some capital. I would say if somebody wanted a lower amount, they could offer that up, but this is the moment. It's not $1 million for curriculum over the next 10 years is really very little. And what I heard was, I appreciate the spirit in which you offered. I'm really glad you asked the question about whether it was additive, because what I heard from the Native community is we want to speak for ourselves, and I think what you provided, Superintendent, a response, and I feel like what we should be doing is working with the community, just like we said what we were going to do with other communities, which is co-create, and doesn't feel co-creative right now. So I hope that we approve this amendment, and I think it'll make the package stronger, and it's the right thing to do.
And I know we're trying to get to a vote. I don't want to be misquoted. And just to be clear that in the outline, and I know it's posted online, so I don't have hard copies, I do want to acknowledge that all 7 of you heard that for the first time when I reported, so it wasn't anything that any of you had beforehand. It had been something that I had been thinking about and then finally put to paper to present today, but it wasn't just some random items. I do acknowledge that it brings about $1.6 million in resources, from curriculum to a position to other tutoring support, and it's not a proposal. Regardless of where you're at or what you decide, I know that that's work that we need to activate today, and all of those items said in conjunction and in collaboration with the Native community. So if we have this meeting on March 3rd and the community says, hey, we don't want you to have a tribal liaison to do some engagement and to work with us, then I'm not going to push it. I'm just saying that I'm prepared to make the reductions in my budget now to respond to some of the things I said in the letter. But I don't want it to be like, oh, I just went and randomly tied something. The only thing I have control over is my budget. And that's the only thing that I took some positions on, which is here's some amount that I know that I can allocate now for work that can happen this academic year in preparation for next year. So I wanted to be clear that that's what that is, and not to, I want to be quoted correctly.
Let's move to the vote. We are now.
Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt again. I just wanted to note that I received a request to provide comment that was virtual, and I just wanted to make sure that you knew.
Is it on the amendment or the bond?
On the amendment.
Because we still have public comment on the bond. So.
We do.
Yeah.
No, we won't be. We added the amendment, and they said they could be virtual. We didn't say that they couldn't be virtual.
One last one, and that's it.
And so if they have signed up,
oh yeah, you can stop.
all right, don't.
Take a yes.
And she's not there yet. She's getting on right now.
That's a great idea. Can we bring up general public comment while we're waiting on the online person?
Okay. Just a second, let me get back to it. Bradley Blocker, Angela Bonilla, and Jasmine Reese. Okay. Okay. Jasmine is remote. I'm bringing her in. Jasmine, you can begin when you're ready.
Oh, my apologies. Good evening. My name is Jasmine Reese, spelled Jazzmin. Last name is Reese, Reece. And I'm a resident of Southwest Portland. My kids attend elementary school in Southwest Portland, and I just want to echo and reiterate what Director Scott had said about the bond accounting, and the time is now, and if there is an opportunity for cost savings, we should do it. And then also what PAT President Angela Bonilla mentioned about us working together and pushing the legislature to fully fund the QEM. I had the opportunity to attend the Oregon Leadership Summit a couple weeks ago, and in the breakout session on early education, led by the Children's Institute, former Governor Kitzhaber spoke and said that The Economist is predicting a $6 billion surplus in addition to Governor Kotek's budget. And so while I support the bond and while I support cost-saving measures, and I agree that we need to support Superintendent Dr. Armstrong, I think that PPS also needs to be strategically prepared to lobby the legislature to do more than what is in the budget for the governor, and to extend beyond the legislative concepts that are currently on the table to look for more funding and more resources. And so I support the bond, I support the work of Dr. Armstrong and what the union is advocating for and what Andrew Scott has said. And I thank everyone for their hard work and the project team, but I think that Dr. Armstrong's correct in that we need to rise together, and we need to make sure that we're working together collaboratively to continue to close this achievement gap for all of our students. And I yield my time.
Thank you. Next.
The other two weren't here, and I don't have the virtual person yet. They're still working on it.
I know that sign everywhere I see it. Let's move to the vote. All right, we are now voting on, I don't know how to word this, the amendment as proposed by Director Brim Edwards. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no.
No.
Student Representative Consavi?
Yes.
Thank you. The amendment does not pass with the vote of 2 to 5, with Student Representative Consavi voting yes. All right. We will now vote on resolution we will now vote on resolution 7038, resolution of Portland Public Schools, Multnomah County District Number 1J, Multnomah County, Oregon, calling on measure election to submit to the electors of the district the question of authorizing $1.83 billion of general obligation bonds and providing for related matters. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Representative Kasavi?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 7038 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Kasavi unofficially voting yes. Next, we have reports from our board committees and board members who have recently traveled to conferences. Director Sullivan, you want to start?
Yeah. This is from the Audit Committee. In the Audit Committee meeting of Monday, December 16th, the annual financial statement audit and the bond audit were presented. The main takeaways in the financial audit were that there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls related to the preparation of the 23-24 annual comprehensive financial report, commonly referred to as the ACFR. The bond audit showed that bonds were progressing as planned, with some recommendations for better defining of career learning objectives and more effective implementation of the CBSE, the Center for Black Student Excellence. Stormy Shanks, the PPS's Senior Director of School Modernization, presented plans to implement the outstanding recommendations from past audits. This was a long meeting, and there's a lot of reading material associated with the topics. The presentation and discussion are recorded and available on PPS's website and board book, and it really is pretty interesting if you can get into it a bit. Another accountability measure for the PPS bond program is the oversight provided by an independent group of community members who volunteer their time to serve on the PPS's Bond Accountability Committee, called the BAC. On tonight's consent agenda, there is a resolution to approve Bond Accountability Committee members. It is noted in the accompanying memo in the memo which notes the appointments tonight, the BAC membership will reach a total of 9, leaving room for additional members. Our bond auditor suggested that having members on the BAC who have experience in curriculum and technology would be a good idea. So I'd like to encourage staff to keep that in mind as they actively recruit potential candidates with that experience, and also board members, if you know anyone to refer with experience in that area, that would be a good idea too. The next audit committee meeting will be in February or March. Once we get the meeting confirmed, I will let you know. And I think a lot of you on the audit committee saw that long meeting and were part of that long meeting, and Julia especially appreciated your questions during that, and people can view that.
I would just note that we need to make sure that the audit committee and the board is driving what is audited, given it's our oversight responsibility versus having staff define audit topics.
I would like to, just for the sake of time, maybe we could do the conference reports next board meeting, if that's okay with you. Well, we heard 2. You got 2 more to go, right? Each conference that you go to. All right. Next up, we have thank you, Director Sullivan. It's a great report. And next we have the consent agenda. The board will now vote on the consent agenda. Board members, if there are any items you would like to pull for a separate vote, please indicate those now.
Well, just for the sake of keeping Andrew here, I want to pull all of them.
I was going to pull all of it myself. Could we vote on everyone separately?
Great. All of them have been pulled. Are we kidding?
Motion for the entire consent agenda as one.
Second.
Hey, did you turn on your mic? Because if you did, it might be official.
It was.
Okay. Oh boy, this is going to be a long night. Ms. Bradshaw, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
Great. All right, we will now, do I have a motion? Are we good?
We did it. I moved.
He's
Herman
second.
seconded.
Each one individually?
No, we was joking.
Total
Wow,
joke.
how am I supposed to know? That's all I'm saying.
Total joke.
Saturate
No, I moved the entire thing.
And he ain't a
Sorry.
cusser.
Director Scott moves and Director Green seconds the adoption of the consent agenda. Any board discussion on the consent agenda? All right, the board will now vote on resolution 7031 through 7037. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Student Representative Consavi?
Yes.
Thank you. Consent agenda as amended is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Consavi voting yes. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.